Chapter 1075. What Wei Xiai and Jiang Pengji were worried about had happened. Huang Song had taken over Qinzhou and Song Prefecture. The Mengs had surrendered with Meng Prefecture. In other words, Jiang Pengji hadn't gained anything. Huang Song had taken all the advantages. If Jiang Pengji hadn't restrained the Gaoyues, they would have suffered great losses. They wouldn't even have gotten Shenyang County. Her face darkened. Her dark eyes flashed with murderous intent. The atmosphere was heavy, sticky, and suffocating. The ministers and generals felt oppressed. The fat man was even more afraid. He tried his best to curl himself into a ball. He rubbed his head against Wei Xi's palm. He wanted to hide his entire body in it. He let out a low whimper, as if he was afraid of something. Only in this way could it feel a sense of security. Wei Xiai caressed the fur on its head and back with his palm while he raised his hand nonchalantly and covered its body with his sleeve. Meng Zhan, that old man, he's so calculative. Jiang Pengji held a copper paperweight in her hand. Everyone could clearly see the deep finger marks on the paperweight. The entire paperweight was twisted. They could imagine how angry Jiang Pengji was at that moment. He set me up before he died. If I don't fight back, he'll think I'm made of mud. Meng Heng sat with his head down. He didn't say a word. He retracted his gaze, his face calm and tranquil. No one dared to make a sound. They were afraid to touch Jiang Pengji's bottom line. Meng Zhan had gone too far this time. His plan was ruthless. With Huang Song's help, it was obvious that he wanted Jiang Pengji to swallow this loss. Wei Xiai secretly looked around. Seeing that everyone was pretending to be dead one by one, he could only bite the bullet and stand out. My lord, there's no solution to this situation. In my opinion, it's better to retreat in order to advance. Everyone knows that my lord is holding back the Mengs. With your hard work, Magistrate Huang can sit back and enjoy the fruits of your labor. It's not too much for my lord to take half of Meng County. All in all, they couldn't let Huang Song take over Meng County. Jiang Pengji sneered. Take half? Isn't that better? If the Mengs did not make such a move, Jiang Pengji could admit defeat and be convinced that Huang Song had conquered 2 counties in Sangzhou with his military strength. Who knew that the Meng family would play tricks at this critical juncture? Not only did they help Huang Song take over Qinzhou, but they also gave up 2 counties. The Mengs did this to annoy Jiang Pengji. In this way, if she could swallow this insult, she would not be called Jiang Pengji. Wei Xiai sighed and consoled her. Our army has the advantage of geographical and human conditions. Unfortunately, time is not on our side and we have made a mistake. Given the situation, my lord, please don't get angry and harm your health. The only thing we can do now is to think of a way to stop the losses in time. Please reconsider, my lord. Wei Xiai was not frightened by Jiang Pengji. Instead, he advised her to calm down with a gentle voice. For a moment, Meng Han and the other generals looked at him with awe. Their lord's aura was too frightening. Even if they were numb to killing, they were still sweating profusely. The back of their clothes was drenched in sweat. The gazes of the civil officials were much more complicated. A true warrior dared to face an erupting volcano and a furious lord. Wei Xiai was the lord's personal fire extinguisher. Although Jiang Pengji was angry, she was still rational. Seeing that the atmosphere in the tent was stagnant, she slightly restrained her aura. Seeing that her expression had cleared up, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. If their lord remained in a state of rage, even if they were not scared to death, they would be nervous to death. Fengzhen secretly wiped his sweat and bowed. I really have a plan. Maybe we can stop the losses. Jiang Pengji raised her eyelids. Her expression was calm and unruffled, as if she was not the one who had exploded in anger. Zisher, what plan do you have? Tell me. Fengzhen sorted out his thoughts and bowed. My lord is the appointed magistrate of Wanzhou by the imperial court. You receive your lord's salary, so you should share his burdens. The Mengs are treacherous. They rebelled against their superiors and massacred the royal family. Their crimes are too numerous to list. My lord is a loyal official. Naturally, you must avenge your lord and kill the traitors with your own hands. This was something that Prefecture Overseer Huang could understand. Why don't we send troops from Hu County to Qinzhou to rescue you? Jiang Pengji said angrily, the royal family is all dead. Feng Zhen's eyes shone. Which man in the world doesn't like women? Who can guarantee that the Mengs have really killed off the royal family? Perhaps there are still some among the people. My lord has been receiving the imperial court's salary for many years. You should preserve some of the royal family's descendants. If the Mengs said that they had killed off the royal family, then they had really been killed? Would loyal officials and generals not be allowed to lead troops to search for their descendants? Based on this reason alone, Jiang Pengji had the right to deploy troops to Qinzhou. Huang Song had many troops, but not many. If he wanted to completely control Qinzhou, it would take some time. While the enemy's foundation was not stable, it was better to besiege Wei to rescue Zhao and see whether Huang Song wanted Qinzhou or Cangzhou. Meng Hun said worriedly, I'm afraid it will be too late to deploy troops now. Feng Zhen said, Commander Meng, have you forgotten about Deputy Commander Jing Rong and Deputy Commander Dian? Jing Rong? Deputy Commander Dian? Meng Hun suddenly understood. Yang Si and Dian Wei had been deployed to Hu County by Jiang Pengji. They were in charge of the alliance with Su Bei and had kept a low profile for many years. Hu County was not far from Qinzhou. If they deployed troops from Hu County, they could definitely make it in time. Jiang Pengji's eyes shone with a cold, calculating light, as if she was considering the feasibility of Feng Zhen's words. She turned to ask Feng Jin and the others, does anyone have anything to say? Feng Jin thought about it, closed his eyes slightly, and cupped his hands in front of his chest. My lord, I don't think it's time to lay my cards on the table with Governor Huang. Jiang Pengji tapped her finger on the table and said coldly, you're right, it's not the right time to lay my cards on the table yet. The atmosphere in the tent was tense. Even the audience in the streaming room did not dare to make jokes. Hearing the conversation between Feng Jin and Jiang Pengji, a few of the more hot-tempered audience could not help but speak up. Qianxi Durian Piao, Meng Zhan is scheming. Huang Song, as an ally, has reached an agreement with the enemy. Although in the face of benefits, it's nothing. But Huang Song's actions are still upsetting. Streamer, are you really going to take this loss? Xiang Wuxianhao, streamer, when did your temper become so weak? The audience still liked Jiang Pengji, who was always angry. How could she take it lying down when someone was bullying her? Xingye Jingyue, don't be anxious. I think the streamer must have her own considerations. Maybe there's something we don't know. A small portion of the audience was angry, but most of them were calm. There were even some who were secretly happy to see Jiang Pengji suffer a setback. Although she suffered a setback, the streamer had always been smooth sailing. She was angry at everyone, so it was boring to watch. Shimo Ning, I wonder if there'll be a chance to see Meng Zhan. He counterattacked and made the streamer suffer in silence. That's not easy. Speaking of this, many of the audience expressed their regret. To be able to make the streamer suffer a setback, that's a true warrior. At that moment, a few blue bullet screens appeared timidly. Chapter 1076. All the viewers in the streaming room were dumbfounded. When had they ever seen Meng Zhan? Jiang Pengji also noticed the bullet screen. She frowned and raised her eyebrows. Meng Zhan lived in Cangzhou, and she fought all the time. She had never seen Meng Zhan, so it was impossible for the viewers in the streaming room to have seen him. However, Jiang Pengji suddenly thought of something when she saw the color of the bullet screen. She suddenly understood. The viewers in blue were the viewers of the time-traveling woman streaming room. Jiang Pengji had never seen Meng Zhan, but it didn't mean that the time-traveling woman hadn't seen Meng Zhan. Maybe when the time-traveling woman met Meng Zhan, she had the streaming room open, So the viewers in that dimension had seen Meng Zhan? Jiang Pengji thought for a moment. That was the most likely guess. It turned out that Jiang Pengji's guess was correct. Not only that, but from the comments of the viewer, she could more or less guess why Meng Zhan valued the bastard son so much. Tangerine lemon candy, that's old news from a long, long time ago. I was in my first year of high school, and I accidentally entered the streaming room. No, not the streamer's streaming room, the one with the color. Although the content was very embarrassing, the streaming room was very popular. The male and female protagonists were both very good-looking. I liked to watch it when I had nothing to do to relieve my stress from studying. The viewer rambled on and on for a long time before he got to the main topic. Orange lemon candy. I remember there was a rich man in the streaming room who issued a task for the streamer to act as a prostitute and attack the son of an aristocratic family. The streamer's target was Lu Shi at first, but then she changed it to Meng Zhan. To be honest, I had a deep impression of Meng Zhan, not because of his high status or good looks, but because he was the first man to defeat the streamer. He was a real man. Jiang Pengji was surprised. She thought Meng Zhan was also a subject of the time-traveling woman, but he wasn't. He even rejected the time-traveling woman. And then? The viewers had the same thought as Jiang Pengji. They were eager to hear the gossip. The viewer didn't keep them waiting. He quickly sent another bullet screen. Orange lemon candy, the streamer is also proud. As a fairy, how could she be rejected by a mortal? She and Meng Zhan didn't end well. When they were arguing, the streamer said Meng Zhan had weak sperm and called him a natural eunuch. Later, the streamer even arranged a doctor to attack Meng Zhan. I remembered that Meng Zhan had a few maids who warmed his bed. They served him for a few years, but they didn't have any children. Looking at the bullet screen, Jiang Pengji vaguely pieced together the truth of that year. If Meng Zhan really had asthenospermia, it would be extremely difficult for him to make women infertile. It was not unreasonable for him to suspect the blood of Meng Heng and Nie Sun. Under the woman's scheme, the wedding procession was ambushed by bandits the night before Gu Zhen married Meng Zhan. Although the reinforcements had arrived in time and saved the people, it was impossible for Meng Zhan to not have a thorn in his heart. Unfortunately, Gu Zhen did not shed any blood on her wedding night, which seemed to further prove the fact that she had been defiled by the bandits. After that, Gu Zhen was found to be pregnant. Calculating the time, it happened to be around the time of the wedding. Meng Zhan was well aware of his body's problem. Although he had the ability to conceive, the chance of success was too small. It couldn't be a coincidence. At this time, the time-traveling woman created another illusion, letting Meng Zhan see the scene of Gu Dai having an affair with her servant. At this stage, Meng Zhan could still tolerate it. However, Gu Zhen's unwillingness to abort the fetus in her belly deepened Meng Zhan's suspicion. After a series of punches, Gu Zhen and Meng Zhan fell out of each other's hearts. The time-traveling woman tormented Gu Zhen, not only because of Gu Min, but also because of Meng Zhan. Meng Zhan rejected the charming time-traveling woman and married Gu Min's stepsister. How could the time-traveling woman tolerate it? She wouldn't rest until she made some trouble for him. Thinking about it, Jiang Pengji felt that the time-traveling woman was even more disgusting. She only destroyed her soul, which was too easy for her. Pusixio. Weak sperm. Now that you mention it, Meng Zhan's head can be grazed with sheep. Tungzi liang tang, weak sperm isn't absolute infertility. It's just that the probability of getting pregnant is much lower than normal people. This disease can still be improved through nursing. In short, Meng Zhan still has the hope of becoming a father. The fact proved that the audience was right. The time-traveling woman pointed out the defects in Meng Zhan's body. He invited doctors and asked for medicine to cultivate his mind. Although it wasn't as good as normal people, after a few times, he could still have his own children. That was how Meng Zhan's illegitimate son came about. After Gu Zhen fell out of favor, the number of women in Meng Zhan's backyard increased. Everyone's whereabouts were strictly monitored to prevent the possibility of being cuckolded. After so many years, only the concubine and Gu Zhen got pregnant. Their children were Meng Liang and Nie Sun. Meng Zhan didn't believe that Gu Zhen's children were his. Firstly, Gu Zhen's body was weak at that time, and he was in such a condition. They only slept together a few times. The probability of them having children was too low. Secondly, under the interference of the time-traveling woman, Meng Zhan saw Gu Zhen fooling around with the manservants in the front yard. He hated Gu Zhen even more. If it wasn't for the Lu and Gu family's reputation, Meng Zhan would have strangled Gu Zhen to death. Why would he spare her life? The streaming room was bustling with gossip. Jiang Pengji lowered her eyelids. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Meng Zhan had schemed against her before. If she didn't retaliate, it would be too easy for the old man. In this era, there was a habit of not killing those who surrendered. Meng Zhan surrendered to Huang Song. Logically speaking, Huang Song wouldn't kill him. But Jiang Pengji didn't care. Jiang Pengji's temper was too tough. Huang Song didn't know her very well, but he knew most of it. Therefore, after he accepted Meng Zhan's surrender, he didn't let him go. Instead, he locked him up in prison. The rest of the Mengs were demoted to commoners. Guards were sent to watch them. I heard that Meng County is rich and populous. Looks like it doesn't live up to its name. Although he was locked up in prison, the cell was clean and tidy. The bedding still smelled like sunshine. Meng Zhan had 3 meals a day. His life wasn't bad. Although he had surrendered Meng County, there were still too many secrets in Meng Zhan's mind. If Huang Song wanted to know more, he had to deal with him. The more he interacted with him, the more curious Huang Song became. Meng Zhan was obviously a cunning old fox. Why did he act so aggressively? If he had given in to Jiang Pengji, Meng Zhan wouldn't have been able to maintain his former glory, but the Mengs could continue to exist. But now, he had made one wrong move after another. He had lost all his trump cards. Meng Zhan sneered. Governor Huang, you really got what you wanted. I'm no match for you in terms of ambition. I'm even worse when it comes to appetite. Meng Zhan's face was full of fatigue. He looked much older than his actual age. His eye sockets were deep and his eye bags were heavy. His eyes were like a ghost's, making people uncomfortable. Chapter 1077. Huang Song didn't even need to think to know how angry Jiang Pengji was. The war was hard, but he was the one who picked up the benefits. He said half-truthfully, Master Meng, you know Lanting. How could you not know her temperament? Meng Zhan sneered. It was a fake smile. He looked extremely cold. Huang Song, who was sitting opposite him, picked up his tea and took a sip. His lips curled into a smile. Huang Song knew that doing so would offend Jiang Pengji, but the benefits in front of him were too tempting for him to refuse. Wealth comes from risk. If he didn't seize this opportunity, he might not have a chance to make a comeback in the future. He also wanted to go to a higher place and enjoy the scenery of the mountains. He didn't want to stand at the foot of the mountain and look at the person at the top. When he was young, Huang Song only wanted to be a good and virtuous minister who contributed to the country. However, Feng Zhu cut off his path of retreat and stirred up his dormant ambition, which was out of control. He didn't want to be below others. Other than climbing up, Huang Song had no other way out. Meng Zhan said, "What are you afraid of?" Huang Song said, "I'm not like you. You can abandon your clan and everything, but I don't have the guts to do so." Although he said this, the wild ambition in his eyes betrayed his inner thoughts. "Since I dared to bet, I'm prepared." Meng Zhan sneered. "Lu Shi, she can't do anything to you." A group of strategists had analyzed what Meng Zhan said for Huang Song. That was why Huang Song had mixed feelings about Meng Zhan. Just as Meng Zhan said, Jiang Pengji couldn't openly offend Huang Song because of his plan. Why? Meng Zhan gave Cangzhou and Huang Song, but he also sent letters to the Yi family of Beiyuan and the Nie family of Zhongzhou. Since the unification of Zhongzhou, the trade route between the two countries had been closed. News was blocked. Zhongzhou didn't know the situation in Dongqing. As for the Beiyuan was located in the north. There weren't many trade and official exchanges between the two countries. News was also not developed. The Meng family was in Sangzhou. With the two natural barriers in Sangzhou, Zhongzhou and the Beiyuan didn't have any plans to attack Dongqing. At that moment, the Meng family sent such news. How could the Yi family of Beiyuan and the Nya family of Zhongzhou not be tempted? As mentioned earlier, the Beiyuan country was ruled by the aristocrats, and the royal family were all puppets. The Yi clan's authority was not the greatest, but it was not far off from another large clan in the North Abyss. If the Yi family obtained the horse farm in Sangzhou, they could instantly reverse the situation and smoothly control the political power of the Beiyuan. There was no need to mention the Nya clan of Zhongzhou. They were now one of the great dukes of Zhongzhou. Which feudal vassal would lack warhorses when conquering the world? The Nya clan didn't have a horse farm. Although they had a strong foundation and could build a strong army, a horse farm was still very attractive to them. Meng Zhan knew what they were thinking. He threw Cangzhou as bait to lure them in, and then he gave Cangzhou to Huang Song. Meng Zhan didn't do it to frame Huang Song. He did it to impede Jiang Pengji. How to restrain him? Outside, there were two strong enemies eyeing her covetously. Jiang Pengji could not possibly fight with Huang Song to the death and allow the two external forces to take advantage of her. If they were to fight, the two natural strongholds in Sangzhou would definitely be breached by the enemy. That was why Feng Jin had said that this wasn't a good opportunity to lay his cards on the table with Huang Song. Meng Zhan could ignore his country and the world, but Jiang Pengji couldn't. Even if she suffered a setback, she still had to think of the big picture. Meng Zhan's anger subsided a little when he thought of Jiang Pengji being bullied, but it couldn't be cured. Only the blood of Lu Shi and his daughter could calm his soul. Huang Song stood up from his seat and said something before he left. Lanting will arrive with his troops in a few days. Does old Master Meng need my help? Huang Song couldn't care less about the grudges between Meng Zhan and Jiang Pengji, but Meng Zhan had indeed helped him a lot. He wouldn't be stingy with his help. No. Just ask Lu Landing to come over. Meng Zhan knew what Huang Song meant, but he wasn't afraid of death. He didn't need the pity and help of an ant. Even if he died, he wouldn't bow down to his enemy. After 2 months, Huang Song and Jiang Pengji met again, but the atmosphere was not as harmonious as before. However, everyone was a drama queen. No matter what they were thinking, they pretended to be good to each other. Where's Meng Zhan? Jiang Pengji stationed the army at the border of Qianyan County. She brought 5,000 elites to the government office of Meng County. It used to be Meng Zhan's residence, but now it was Huang Song's temporary residence. Huang Song suggested with a smile, Lanting must be tired from the long journey. Why don't you rest first and interrogate him tomorrow? Even when he met Jiang Pengji's eyes, he didn't show any signs of cowardice. Jiang Pengji said, Fine. It doesn't matter to me whether he lives a day longer or a day shorter. Huang Song set up a banquet for Jiang Pengji. There was an endless supply of good wine and delicacies. It was much more luxurious than the banquet in Heda County. The time was different, and the mood was different. No one was in the mood to enjoy. They looked happy on the outside, but their hearts were heavy. The civil officials were introverted, and they were good at disguising themselves. They were almost flawless. In comparison, the generals were less composed. The worse the temper, the more impatient they were. At that moment, Meng Heng secretly winked at Jiang Nongqin. Jiang Nongqin, who always kept a low profile, drank a cup and put it down in dissatisfaction. The table made a dull noise. Why do I only have water here? Are you purposely neglecting me? No one was in the mood to dance. When they heard Jiang Nongqin's words, they all turned to look at her. Only then did many people realize that she was a female general, but she was mingling with a group of men. Jiang Nongqin ignored the gazes of others and pointed at the wine goblet of the old General Yuan Xian. She said in an arrogant tone, "Someone, bring me that bronze wine goblet and a jar of strong wine. I don't want it if it's not strong." Yuan Xian was already filled with anger. When he saw Jiang Nongqin pointing her finger at him, his anger flared up. How could a guest be so rude? A guest was a guest. How could a guest be the host? "Young lady, drinking some light fruit wine will do," Jiang Nongqin said. "I'm the captain of 20,000 troops. If I'm dissatisfied with the bland water, what's wrong with changing the wine goblet?" Yuan Xian snorted coldly. He obviously didn't believe Jiang Nongqin's words. Jiang Pengji, who was sitting at the head of the table, looked at Yuan Xian coldly and said, "Old general, is there anything you're dissatisfied with?" Yuan Xian choked. Meng Heng came out to smooth things over and barely managed to dodge the matter. In the end, his gaze fell on Nie Sun. There was concern in his eyes. He realized that Nie Sun was also looking at him with gratitude. If Meng Heng hadn't come out to smooth things over, it would have been difficult for anyone to clean up the mess. At that moment, Jiang Pengji said. Jiang Pengji and Huang Song saw everything that happened. She lowered her voice and asked Huang Song. Chapter 1078. Huang Song subconsciously did not want to agree. He was a little hesitant. Jiang Pengji did not wait for him to think of an excuse and made a joke. "Bogeo, you won't be reluctant if I ask you for Mr. Nia, right?" "Why would I be reluctant? Lanting is willing to let Qingyun accompany him. This is his trust in him." Although he said that, Huang Song knew very well that if Yuanxin's hostility was not too obvious and made Jiang Pengji unhappy, she would not have taken such a precautionary action. Jiang Pengji stationed the army in Xianyan County and rushed there with only 5,000 men. She had taken a huge risk. Huang Song could completely understand that she was very defensive and repelled people who were hostile to her. Yuanxin drank a little too much. When he heard that Nie Sun wanted to get close to Jiang Pengji's people, his nerves tightened. "I'm just a boorish man. I can't say extravagant words of praise." Burp. Governor of Liuzhou is honorable. A mere Nie Qingyun does not carry enough weight. How can he match my lord's friendship with you? If word gets out, outsiders will say that my lord is neglecting a distinguished guest and doesn't know etiquette. Yuanxin's cheeks were red from drinking, but his eyes were not cloudy. Instead, they flashed with a narrow-minded and stern look. "I heard." Burp. "I heard that Governor of Liuzhou and Fengbi Jia are good friends when they were young. Fengbi Jia is my lord's most trusted right-hand man. It will not be impolite if Fengbi Jia accompanies you." As he spoke, he burped. The wine bottle in his hand trembled and half of the wine was gone. It seemed that he was very drunk. In fact, he seemed drunk but not drunk. His mind was still very clear. There was only one thought in his mind. He absolutely could not let Nie Sun and Jiang Pengji's people get too close. Unbeknownst to him, his precautionary action had put Nie Sun in an awkward position. Huang Song's expression was slightly unfriendly. He could only laugh dryly and apologize to Jiang Pengji on behalf of Yuanxin. Feng Ju, who was sitting below, was about to step forward to speak when Jiang Pengji said with a tired and bored expression, Forget it, forget it. Why are you so defensive? We're family, why speak so differently? If Huijie has time and Bogeo is willing to let him go, it'll be good to accompany me." Seeing this, Feng Ju had no choice but to swallow his words of apology. He cupped his hands and said, "If Governor of Liuzhou doesn't mind, I will accompany you." The atmosphere of the banquet was strange to begin with, and now it became even more stagnant. Huang Song tried his best to lighten the mood, but the crowd still did not know the taste of food. There was suspicion and wariness among them. Jiang Pengji pretended to be drunk and left. She returned to the tent arranged by Huang Song. She asked someone to get a basin of cold water for her and then buried her face in the cold water. After a while, Jiang Pengji raised her head, closed her eyes, and searched for the position of the cloth. She grabbed a towel and wiped the water stains on her face. Her pale face was flushed red because of the cold water and the towel. When she opened her eyes, she happened to see the screen full of bullet screens. Most of the audience was comforting Jiang Pengji. Although they were only spectators, the strange atmosphere of the banquet and the unnatural interaction between old friends made everyone feel that something was wrong. Shimo Nian Nian, my heart aches for the streamer. Things remain the same, but people have changed. It's too cruel. Hongbangxi Feng, last night, I stayed up late to chase after Feng Tian's group. Today, when I saw the scene between the streamer and Huang Song, I suddenly remembered Crab saying to Bao Zi that we will never be the same again. Oh my God, I've been stabbed twice in a row. My heart is broken. Even though the audience had been mentally prepared for the streamer and Huang Song to quarrel, they still felt bad when they saw the scene. In this regard, Jiang Pengji could only say that they were still too emotional. Streamer V, if I were Bogeo today, guess what I would do? I would set up a Hongmen banquet, cut the weeds, and eliminate the roots. Bogeo did not do this, not because he did not think of it or because he was not that vicious, but because he was not confident and had concerns. Although it was just a short sentence, the audience felt the coldness and heartlessness that came rushing at them. The audience was stunned. Many felt that Jiang Pengji's thoughts were too dark and could not help but refute. Crab Huang Bao Shui, if Huang Song is really so bad, why didn't he do anything at the banquet? This is his home ground. He poisoned or set up an ambush in advance. Streamer, you didn't bring many people with you. If it's really a Hongmen banquet, no matter how I look at it, Huang Song has a higher chance of winning. Jiang Pengji smiled, her expression a little cold. Streamer V, Bogeo has seen me kill people. No one under him can stop me, so he said that he is not confident. If we really fight, the first person to die will be him. As for concerns, if Bogeo and I fight, others will benefit. It's not worth it. At that moment, Feng Ju sent someone to send Huang Song, who reeked of alcohol, back to the backyard. Lady Qi hurriedly sent someone to get some hangover soup. Lady, leave the hangover soup first. Let me get drunk for a while. Huang Song supported his swollen head with his right hand on the short table. His breathing was heavy and tired. How much did you drink today, Lang Jun? Lady Qi said angrily, you haven't recovered from your chronic illness, yet you still dare to go against the doctor's advice and drink without restraint? Huang Song said with a slurred tongue, I didn't drink much. I'm only half drunk. It's good to be drunk. At least I won't let my imagination run wild. Let my imagination run wild? Lady Qi was surprised. Huang Song leaned against Lady Qi's shoulder and buried his head in the crook of her neck. He lowered his voice and said, Lanting only brought 5,000 elites with her. This is a good opportunity. Perhaps there won't be a better opportunity than this. However, I can't act rashly, and I can't lose my footing. He had to restrain the demons and greedy heart that were clamoring in his heart so that he would not make a stupid decision that he would regret. Instead of letting his mind clear, it was better to get half drunk and use his headache to divert his attention. Lady Qi was stunned for a moment, as if she could not immediately digest this fact. Lang Jun, you mean that today you actually, I haven't put this idea into action yet. I'm just thinking about it in my mind. Huang Song looked slightly tipsy. He shook his head and said, I'm not as good as Lanting in this regard. If I brought 5,000 elites with me today, what awaited me would definitely be a banquet at Hongmen that was filled with killing intent and no chance of survival. She has nothing to worry about. I can't do that. If I dare to do anything else, she can crush my neck first. The scene of Jiang Pengji dismembering a living person with a ceremonial tablet in the court left a deep impression on him. He would occasionally have nightmares about that scene. Of course, if the banquet at Hongmen was effective, Huang Song would not miss this opportunity. He did not make a move. It was precisely because of what Jiang Pengji had said. Firstly, he was not confident. Secondly, he had concerns. The next day, Feng Zhu and Nia Sun came over early in the morning to take attendance. Where is Meng Zhan being locked up at the moment? Jiang Pengji did her morning exercise as usual, then brushed her teeth, washed up, and changed her clothes. She looked refreshed. Feng Zhu cupped his hands and said, Meng Zhan is locked up in the dungeon. I'll go and see him myself. Jiang Pengji glanced at him and pointed at two people. Zixiao, Shijiu, you two follow me. Li Yun volunteered. My lord is traveling alone outside. The two gentlemen are not very skilled in martial arts. I hope my lord will allow me to follow you. Chapter 1079. Feng Zhu and Nia Sun remained silent. Jiang Pengji said, What danger could there be in Bogeo? If you insist, let Officer Meng follow. My lord. Li Yun hesitated and stole a glance at Meng Han, who had a complicated look on his face. He took a step back. Meng Han cupped his fists at Li Yun, his eyes filled with gratitude. Before leaving, Meng Han looked at Jiang Pengji hesitantly with a pleading look in his eyes. No matter how Meng Zhan treated him, they were father and son. Meng Han could ignore Meng Zhan's life and death, but he didn't want to see him die. But Jiang Pengji didn't agree. We are father and son. Send him on his way. Meng Han said, Yes. Nia Sun heard the conversation and felt a chill in his heart. Was this person forcing Meng Han to kill his own father? Feng Zhu said, The dungeon is dark and damp. Why don't we get someone to bring the prisoner out? No, I'll go see for myself. I haven't seen what the dungeon looks like. Just as Feng Zhu said, the environment in the dungeon was terrible. The air was filled with stinky water vapor and there were rats scurrying in the dark. The temperature in the dungeon was much lower than outside. As soon as they stepped into the dungeon, a gust of chilly air hit them in the face, making them uncomfortable. Jiang Pengji walked in front without changing her expression. Feng Zhu led her to a relatively large and clean cell in the dungeon. Meng Zhan's life is not bad. I thought he would suffer a lot in the dungeon. The area of the cell was very large, about 100 square meters. There was a mattress, a tea table, a dining table, and a bowl. Feng Zhu asked the cell to open the door. The commotion alerted Meng Zhan in the cell. When he heard Jiang Pengji's voice, he guessed who it was. It was funny. He had hated Lu Shi and his daughter for many years and had been thinking of ways to take revenge, but he hadn't even seen the person in question. Uncle Meng, this is the first time we've met, right? Jiang Pengji gestured for Feng Zhu and the others to step back and avoid her conversation with Meng Zhan. Only Meng Han stayed by her side to protect her. Meng Zhan's white hair was combed neatly. His cheeks were washed with warm water. There was no grease or dirt. He looked much more energetic than before. But he had aged too fast. His face was an unhealthy gray color and his eyes were sunken. He looked old and pitiful. Although he wasn't in good spirits, his appearance was well. A jade crown hung high above his head, and a jet green scholarly robe was worn on his body. His back was straight, and one could barely see the scholarly elegance of his youth. Meng Zhan raised his head and squinted his eyes. He looked at Jiang Pengji carefully. How dare you call me Uncle Meng? Although Uncle Meng has cut off all ties with my father, you are my aunt's ex-husband. Calling him uncle is a courtesy that a junior should have. Zhan, I said, Jiang is Peng Zhan B. Is. Jiang Meng Zhan. Meng B, Meng said, was she. Is. Was. As her son, how could I not be angry? He was my father's second wife and my mother's sister. She was not only my father's second wife, but she was also my mother's sister. I couldn't let your son bully her. Besides, Meng Zhan and his friends used disguise to sneak into the backyard of the people in Hejin. They raped innocent women. Meng Zhan deserved to die. Meng Zhan's expression changed when Gu Zhen was mentioned, but he quickly calmed down. So what? My son is naughty. He just needs to change. I, his father, will teach him a lesson. Meng Zhan and his friends used disguise to sneak into other people's backyard to bully women. It was nothing new. Meng Zhan had cleaned up his mess for him many times. He was angry at his son's behavior, but what could he do? He was the only child in the family. Who else could he protect if not him? Jiang Pengji was so angry that she laughed. Did you say something in the living room? Meng Zhan raised his eyebrows. What? If you can't discipline your son, don't blame others for teaching him a lesson. I thought Meng Zhan was hopeless, so I sent him on his way. Do you know how I killed Meng Zhan? I cut open his wrist and let him bleed to death. Even though Meng Zhan had a good temperament, he couldn't hold back his anger when the enemy who killed his son talked about how he killed his son. Are you angry? Jiang Pengji smiled. I have more to say. Do you want to hear it? Meng Zhan sneered. You are indeed the daughter of Lu Shi and Gu Min Gu Zhen's stepdaughter. You are indeed vicious and shameless. I am no match for you. If I had 10% of Uncle Meng's skills, would have no regrets. The atmosphere was tense. Meng Hun stared at Meng Zhan, his former boss, with murderous eyes. He didn't expect Meng Zhan to not repent after so many years. Meng Zhan's son was a son, but his wife and children were not human. Lu Lanting, did you come here just to argue with me? Meng Zhan sneered. His face was full of wrinkles, but his eyes were full of vigor. If this is all you've got, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't embarrass yourself in front of me. Jiang Pengji crossed her arms and sat opposite Meng Zhan. She said, It's not that I don't want to, but I'm afraid Uncle Meng can't take it. Meng Zhan's face darkened. Meng Heng and the others stood far away. They couldn't hear what Jiang Pengji and Meng Zhan were saying, but the atmosphere was worrisome. Uncle Meng, you have a problem with your body. It's hard for you to impregnate a woman, right? Jiang Pengji changed her sitting posture and sneered indifferently. What are you trying to say? This is related to a man's dignity. Of course, I have to keep it a secret. Apart from you and your trusted doctor, no one else knows about it. Jiang Pengji ignored him and continued, When my aunt married you, she was ambushed by a group of bandits. She was saved in the end, and the wedding went on as planned. However, the bride didn't bleed that night. Uncle Meng helped to cover it up. Meng Zhan could listen calmly at first, but the more he listened, the more he felt something was wrong. Only he knew the details of what happened that year, but Jiang Pengji described it in detail as if she had seen it with her own eyes. After a month, my aunt was found to be pregnant. She got pregnant on the night of her wedding. Uncle Meng was not confident because of his health. You also saw my aunt being intimate with someone, so you started to doubt the lineage of the baby in her womb. Meng Zhan interrupted her with a cold smile. It's not doubt. Meng Heng, that bastard, is not mine. He would never forget the shame of being cuckolded. His new wife had an affair with someone else. He suddenly sighed. It's a pity. Jiang Pengji frowned. What's a pity? Meng Zhan's face flashed with fierceness. It's a pity that the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women was published too late. If it was 20 or 30 years earlier, before the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women was published, society was still very open. It was not a big deal for a woman to keep a man. Losing her virginity before marriage was not a serious matter. At most, people would gossip about her, but it would not kill her. Chapter 1080. He didn't expect Gu Zhen to treasure the bastard so much. It made Meng Zhan feel like he was slapped in the face. After that, Meng Heng took the title of the eldest son and took the position of the Mengs. Bastard? Did he deserve it? Sigh. It's a pity for me too. Meng Zhan's eyebrows twitched. He wanted to hear what kind of tricks this person in front of him had. Do you really think Cousin Heng isn't your son? My aunt doesn't have a second man except for you. Whether it was before or after marriage, or after divorce, she never betrayed you. Even when she married my father, the two of them maintained their original relationship. Jiang Pengji smiled. Moreover, do you know who wrote the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women? If you knew who she was, you would skin her alive and drink her blood. Why would it be a pity? Meng Zhan didn't believe her. He sneered. You should ask Gu Zhen if she has the guts to accept it. Meng Zhan believed his eyes. Gu Zhen was the only woman he loved and hated. She betrayed him again and again. Did she really think he was afraid of the Gus and the Lus? Of course she has the guts to accept it. I'm just afraid you don't have the courage to admit your mistake. Meng Zhan was a confident and stubborn person. He had a typical trait: he wouldn't shed a tear in front of a coffin. He wouldn't turn back even if he broke the wall. He wouldn't believe that he was wrong. He would only believe in the information he deduced. If she killed Meng Zhan without doing anything, he would still die for her because in his heart, he wasn't wrong. If so, Jiang Pengji would shatter his confidence with solid evidence. She would show him who was wrong. Meng Zhan was so angry that he laughed. His face looked twisted and weird. He said in a cold tone, "Ignorant boy. Your dirty tricks aren't even as good as your father. Kill me if you want. Cut me if you want. If I take a step back, let me be struck by lightning." For the literati of this era, there were always things above their lives. Meng Zhan wasn't afraid of death. Jiang Pengji looked at Meng Zhan's face seriously and said, "I can take any loss, but I can't take any loss. Can't afford to lose?" she said. Meng Zhan's wrinkled face flashed with a trace of mockery. You still can't afford to lose. Other than being stubborn, he didn't seem to have anything else to rely on. Meng Zhan wasn't afraid at all. Meng Zhan originally wanted to reorganize the troops in Cangzhou and fight the last battle. He couldn't let Jiang Pengji take Cangzhou so easily. After some consideration, he gave up on this plan and gave Cangzhou to Huang Song. At the same time, he promised benefits to the Nye family of Zhongzhou and the Yi family of Beiyuan. He wanted to use the two families to restrain Jiang Pengji and make her worry. She would not be able to go all out and settle scores with Huang Song. No arrogant person would be able to tolerate such a humiliating trick and scheme. But she had no choice but to bear this loss, unless she disregarded the bigger picture and courted death on a whim. No matter how strong she was, she wouldn't be able to survive a large-scale war. He had not recovered from the battle at the northern borderline. How could she withstand the combined pressure of the Nye clan and the Yi clan? Meng Zhan was fearless because he knew all this. Jiang Pengji crooked her finger at Meng Zhan. Her tone suddenly turned cold. I have something to say to you. Meng Zhan, you old man, remember this even when you are in front of the king of hell. Anyone who makes me suffer, I will make him suffer 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. Jiang Pengji had experienced all kinds of situations in her 2 lives. From a lowly and insignificant genetic warrior to a commander with military power. Did he really think she got there with her fists? Meng Zhan was not bad. He made her suffer without saying a word. But, did Meng Zhan think about her revenge before he did it? Meng Zhan didn't feel angry when he heard her bold words. Instead, he laughed his head off. He hadn't been this happy since Meng Liang died. I'll be waiting. Jiang Pengji curled her lips and turned to Meng Han, who was trying hard to control himself. Captain Meng, you can leave. Call Shijiao and Qingyun here. Meng Han hesitated, but he couldn't disobey Jiang Pengji's order. Yes. Meng Zhan was stunned when he heard the name, Shijiao. It took him a while to realize it was his eldest son, Meng Han. When Meng Han walked out of the cell, Jiang Pengji said meaningfully, Meng Zhan, open your eyes and see what you've done all these years. Meng Zhan didn't care, but he soon lost his composure. He opened his eyes wide in shock, which reflected his feelings at the moment. What sorcery is this? The dark cell was suddenly lit up. Meng Zhan subconsciously covered his eyes with his hands. It took him a while to get used to the sudden light. When he put down his sleeves, the environment around him suddenly changed. He ran from the dark cell to the main hall of the luxurious mansion. Looking at the decorations around him, he realized many of the furnishings were for the royal family. While he was confused, he saw a man in luxurious clothes flirting with two maids. He was about to put his hand on one of the maids' breasts. At that moment, a cold snort came from nowhere. Humph! You're still messing around here? Meng Zhan was frightened to see a red figure suddenly appear in the place where there was no one. This person was extremely beautiful. Her face was covered with gorgeous makeup, which made her look very flirtatious. This person's appearance could be called peerless seductress. The man who was standing before saluted in fear. Mother. Mother? Meng Zhan's expression didn't change. He calmly analyzed the identity of the two. As the man and the woman talked, Meng Zhan realized their identity with cold sweat. One was Wu Majun, the fourth prince of Dongqing, and the other was Wang Guifei, who had died 800 years ago. Just when he was panicking, he heard a voice that made him clench his teeth in disgust and hatred. Yo, you really have 9 lives. Last time I broke your neck, but it didn't kill you. Now you're alive again. The cynical voice came from outside the door. Meng Zhan followed the voice and found that Lu Shi couldn't see him. No, she wasn't Lu Shi. Meng Zhan quickly found that the Lu Shi he saw was more immature than the one he saw before. Vaguely, he had a guess, everything in front of him was fake. It was most likely someone's memory. As for who that person was, Meng Zhan had already guessed it. He ate vegetarian and prayed to the Buddha, but he didn't believe in such things. Instead, he scoffed at it. But when he saw the unnatural phenomenon with his own eyes, he had to believe it. Meng Zhan calmed down. He wanted to see what Jiang Pengji was up to. The woman in red, Wu Majun, and the immature Lu Shi couldn't see Meng Zhan. They talked among themselves. The more Meng Zhan listened, the more shocked he became. When he learned that Lu Shi adopted Lu Huan and pushed her and Wu Majun to have sex with each other, he laughed. Lu Shi, you aren't any more arrogant than me. Lu Shi was a cruel and merciless person to come up with such a plan. But that was between Lu Shi and the devil. It had nothing to do with him. Chapter 1081. Meng Zhan had never thought that the truth could be so cruel. Yes. I did all these things. At least I am brave enough to take responsibility for what I did. I am better than those whores who pretend to be innocent. The woman in red was emotional. Don't think that you are so noble. Go back to your mother's grave and ask her how she was. She stole her brother-in-law and pushed her sister to Meng Zhan. Now look at how Meng Zhan treated Gu Zhen. She deserved to be avenged. There was too much information in this sentence. What did she mean by Gu Min stole Lu Shi? Meng Zhan was the one who had proposed Gu Zhen's marriage. He had even heard Lu Shi complain about Gu Min's concern for Gu Zhen's marriage. More importantly, Gu Min had listed many talents in Dongqing, but she only had strong opinions about Meng Zhan. She had never considered him. If Meng Zhan hadn't asked for Gu Zhen's hand in marriage and talked to Lu Shi, the marriage might not have happened. Thinking about the strange experience of the woman in red, a scary thought spread in his mind. His mind was racing. The conversation between the woman in red and the young Lu Shi was still going on. My father said that Meng Zhan was a gentleman. When he married my stepmother, he promised to treat her well. But after a few years of marriage, Meng Zhan went against his promise. I don't doubt my father's judgment. He and Meng Zhan were best friends. There was no conflict of interest between them. Meng Zhan didn't have to lie to him. So, what did you do? Meng Zhan suddenly remembered the promise he made when he was young. He fell in love with Gu Zhen at first sight. He could still remember the scene in the Lu mansion. He couldn't forget it even in the middle of the night. So what if she was the daughter of a concubine? Except for her low birth, Gu Zhen met all the requirements to be the wife of the Mengs. Meng Zhan was young and aggressive. He wanted to marry someone he liked. Meng Zhan hadn't recovered from the memory when the woman in red's voice exploded in his ears. Gu Zhen's wedding night didn't fall. In order to help her gain a foothold in her maiden family, I gave her a congratulatory gift so that she could have a child in one night. Meng Zhan clenched his fists. The young Lu Shi asked what was on his mind. And then? On the night before Gu Zhen's wedding, she was ambushed by a small group of bandits on the way to the wedding. In the end, it was a close shave, but there were rumors that Gu Zhen had lost her virginity to the bandits. The wedding was just around the corner, so it was impossible for it to fail. You also know that men care a lot about things like falling red. There was no red on the wedding night. Meng Zhan wanted to endure it, but Gu Zhen got pregnant on the first night of the wedding. So, who does this child belong to? Meng Zhan didn't dare to listen anymore. Wasn't the child they had on their wedding night Meng Heng? He didn't want to listen, but the person in the scene couldn't stop. Lu Shi continued to ask, did you also do something to the stepmother's second child? The red-clothed woman shamelessly admitted it. Meng Zhan has seen Gu Zhen fooling around with the servants in the mansion. How could he not hate her? Stepmother would never do such a thing. Hearing this, Meng Zhan gritted his teeth. How could Gu Zhen not do such a thing? He had seen it with his own eyes, so how could it be false? The woman in red smiled sweetly and covered her red lips with her fingers. Transfiguration pills are good stuff. Transfiguration pills? Hearing the name, Meng Zhan could guess what it was used for. He couldn't stop being shocked. No, this was fake. Lu Shi knew sorcery. How hard could it be to fabricate a scene? Meng Zhan roared in his heart over and over again. All of this was Lu Shi's trick. It wasn't real. He was terrified. He didn't want to admit that he was wrong. He didn't wrong Gu Zhen. The more he thought about it, the more memories came into his mind. He couldn't ignore it. He remembered how much Gu Zhen loved Meng Heng. Every time he showed a little bit of disgust, she always showed a heartbroken expression. The husband and wife had tortured each other for years. Gu Zhen became more and more quiet and cold. She was like a lifeless dead wood. It annoyed him. How could a woman who had betrayed him show an expression that he hurt her? Don't you have only yourself to blame for all this? If you were willing to trust her a little bit, let go of your arrogance and dominance, and talk to your aunt, all these misunderstandings could be solved. The 4 self-accomplishment classics for women was written by that evil woman in red. She first took over Wang Huiyun's body and used it to stir up trouble. In the end, she took over Empress Du's body and wrote the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women, which made you sigh that it was too late. What do you think? Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Is it exciting? Jiang Pengji appeared in front of Meng Zhan. But you can't blame the monster for what happened. You, Meng Zhan, have to take half of the responsibility. Even if it didn't happen, you are still a scumbag. Think about what you have done over the years. Which one of them is good? Jiang Pengji continued to provoke him. As the leader of the Mengs, when have you ever treated the people in Sang Prefecture well? You allowed your son of a concubine to commit crimes everywhere. He hurt the loyal and innocent, and he raped women and children. He even wanted to hurt his own mother. Isn't that what your father taught him? Meng Zhan endured the pain in his head and shouted angrily. Shut up. Do you still remember Meng Hun? He has been loyal to you and the Mengs for so many years. Your son of a concubine harmed his wife and daughter. Not only did you not help him, but you also protected the concubine and harmed Meng Hun. How can you treat him? If it weren't for you and your son of a concubine, he would not have caused chaos in Meng County. Cousin Heng looks a little like you. Are you blind? The more Meng Zhan did not allow Jiang Pengji to speak, the more she wanted to speak. He wanted her to suffer, didn't he? She would make Meng Zhan wish he was dead. Speaking of cousin Hang, I forgot the son your aunt gave birth to. He was a baby boy with a cinnabar mole between his eyebrows. He was the second son of the Mengs, but your son of a concubine took his place under your control. He was buried in the cold mud by the servant woman when he was less than a month old. Meng Zhan, you killed your son of a concubine. You doted on Meng Liang like he was a treasure, but Meng Hang, as a Zongzi, was dragged down by you and your father to the point that he failed the assessment. The second son of the first wife, who had a strange phenomenon, was buried underground. It was rare to see someone who could harm their son to such an extent. Next, it's time for the main course. Jiang Pengji said it so softly that Meng Zhan could not hear it. In the spiritual realm, Meng Zhan saw a part of Jiang Pengji's memory. It seemed like a long time had passed, but in fact, it was only a short while. Meng Han asked Meng Hang and Nie Sun to go over. They had different thoughts. Feng Ju, who was at the side, became suspicious. Jiang Pengji asked Meng Hang to go over. It was easy. Meng Hang was Meng Zhan's son. Why did she ask Nie Sun to go over? Feng Ju secretly glanced at Nie Sun. The other party's expression made him even more suspicious. Chapter 1082. Meng Hang stood behind Jiang Pengji and looked at Meng Zhan with a complicated expression. No boy didn't look forward to their father. Meng Hang used to look up to Meng Zhan like a god when he was young. But Meng Zhan only had eyes for his son, Meng Liang. Even if Meng Liang was useless and lustful, Meng Zhan still spoiled him like a treasure. Meng Hang had once thought that Meng Zhan liked this kind of son, so he had tried to be like Meng Liang. He had secretly tried to be like Meng Liang, but he was severely punished and ordered to kneel in the ancestral hall. It was winter. It was raining heavily outside. The air was so cold that it felt like there were blades in it. Meng Hang didn't wear much clothing. He knelt until his knees were black and swollen. He almost died. That memory became his childhood nightmare. Occasionally, when he dreamed about it in the middle of the night, he could still clearly remember the cold air that filled the air. Meng Hang looked down and bowed to Jiang Pengji calmly. My lord, why did you call me here? No matter what, you and Meng Zhan were father and son. I'm not an unreasonable person. I don't want you to have any regrets, so I'll allow you to have a word with him. You and your son can make a clean break. Jiang Pengji said, Meng Zhan still owes Captain Meng a debt. Meng Hang was stunned. It took him a while to realize what she meant. Jiang Pengji didn't want him to send Meng Zhan to hell. She just wanted him to talk to Meng Zhan so he wouldn't have any regrets. He felt relieved. He couldn't tell how he felt. Thank you, my lord, Meng Hang said. Meng Liang was the direct murderer of Meng Han's wife and daughter, but Meng Zhan was also an accomplice. Meng Hang had no right to stop or resent her. Jiang Pengji stood up and walked to the door of the cell. She turned her head and whispered, his emotions aren't stable. Don't get too close. Jiang Pengji made way for Meng Hang, but she didn't go too far. This distance wouldn't make Meng Hang feel like he was being watched. It also wouldn't let the situation get out of her control. Meng Hang's eyebrows relaxed after Jiang Pengji left. He saw Nie Sun standing on the side and became suspicious. What was Nie Sun doing there? He didn't think further because he was pressed for time. Father, Patriarch Meng, Meng Hang sat on the mat and bit the tip of his tongue, forcing himself to swallow back the honorific that slipped out of his mouth. He had already been expelled from his sect, and he had cut off all ties with Meng Zhan. If he called him father now, Meng Zhan might not even acknowledge him. Meng Zhan was immersed in his own world. He was on the verge of breaking down. When he suddenly heard someone calling him, he became more alert. When he looked up, he saw Meng Hang's face. Meng Zhan was so agitated that he couldn't control his emotions. He jumped forward with a ferocious face and half of his body crossed the short table. Meng Shizhou. Meng Zhan's face looked ferocious as he shouted Meng Zhan's full name. His skinny hands grabbed Meng Heng's sleeves. Why are you still alive? Why is Meng Shizhou the one who died? How could a bastard like you be my son? Meng Heng was scared out of his wits. He wanted to struggle, but Meng Zhan's scream made him feel like he had fallen into an ice cellar. It was as if all the sounds around him had faded away. What did it mean to be a bastard? Meng Heng didn't struggle. Instead, it gave Meng Zhan a chance to go further. He didn't believe what Jiang Pengji had said. It must have been an illusion created by her witchcraft. Everything was to deceive him. He couldn't have done anything wrong after all these years. Meng Heng was a bastard of Gu Zhen and someone else. He wasn't his son at all. Meng Zhan only had one son in his life. His only son was killed by Lu Shi. The bastard that he had raised for more than 20 years had turned to Lu Shi. He didn't care about Meng Liang's blood feud. How could you be my son? Meng Zhan looked thin and weak, but the power he had was terrifying. Meng Heng didn't have time to react. He grabbed his neck and couldn't get away. Nia Sun was also shocked by Meng Zhan's words. When he came back to his senses, Meng Heng's face had turned green. Without hesitation, Nia Sun kicked Meng Zhan's shoulder. Meng Zhan screamed in pain and let go of his hands. Meng Heng's eyes were filled with tears. His eyes were bloodshot. He couldn't believe it. Was this the reason why Meng Zhan had hated him for so many years? Meng Zhan was the first to react. He pulled out the sword on Meng Heng's waist and stabbed at Meng Heng with the shiny blade. In a flash, Nia Sun didn't have time to think. He grabbed Meng Heng and the two of them rolled together to avoid the sword. Meng Zhan was the first to react. He pulled out the sword on Meng Heng's waist and stabbed at Meng Heng with the shiny blade. Meng Zhan had lost his mind. Seeing that Meng Heng had escaped, he followed up with another attack. You are crazy, Nia Sun blocked with the body of his sword. He had underestimated Meng Zhan's strength and the sword almost fell out of his hand. Kill this bastard. It's all a lie. He is a bastard. Meng Zhan's eyes were red. His old face was twisted and hideous. Nia Sun had stopped him from killing Meng Heng, so he would kill Nia Sun as well. How dare you stop me, you deserve to die. Meng Zhan couldn't control his emotions. All kinds of messy thoughts were about to burst his brain. Scholars in ancient times all learned the 6 arts of gentlemen. Meng Zhan had learned swordsmanship as well. At this moment, he wanted to kill Nia Sun and Meng Heng with no regard for his life. Every move was aimed at the Achilles heel. Nia Sun's left arm was cut. Watch out. Meng Heng regained his composure. He saw Meng Zhan's sword was about to stab Nia Sun's chest. He didn't care and rushed to grab Meng Zhan's legs. Meng Zhan's movement was blocked, so the sword in his hand missed. The tip of the sword went into Nia Sun's shoulder and Nia Sun's sword went into Meng Zhan's chest. Everything happened so fast. When Wei Ci and the others realized what had happened and rushed over, it was already too late. With a clang, the sword in Meng Zhan's hand fell to the ground. Nia Sun was also shocked. He let go of the sword that was covered in sticky blood. Although the sword didn't hit the heart, it was still a vital part. Even if the doctor could get here, Meng Zhan would still die. The pain in his chest suppressed the swelling pain in his head. His mind slowly came back and his hideous face softened. Shizhou, Meng Zhan opened his mouth, but his tone was calm. Meng Heng was still in a daze. He let go of his hands and held Meng Zhan's body. The sticky and glaring blood rushed into his eyes. He was out of his wits. His pale lips were trembling. He said, Meng. Master Meng? Meng Zhan heard the name. His pale face showed a trace of mockery and tiredness. His chest was hurting. He lowered his head and looked at the direction of the sword. He looked at the young man who put the tip of the sword into his body. He was about 25 or 26 years old, with a handsome face and a bright red cinnabar mole between his eyebrows. That face? That cinnabar mole? Suddenly, Jiang Pengji's words rang in his head. Chapter 1083. You dote on Meng Liang like she's a treasure. Who was Meng Liang? He was the son of a concubine in the Meng's family. Because of Meng Zhan's favoritism, he took the title of the legitimate son. The voice in his head refused to let him go, clearly pointing out what stupid thing he had done. As a Zongzi, Meng Heng was dragged down by Yu father and son to the point that he failed the assessment. When Meng Zhan thought of this, his already uncomfortable chest hurt even more. It was as if a hand was squeezing his heart, trying to crush it. Meng Zhan was in so much pain that he couldn't even open his mouth. His face was drained of color, and his hands and feet were as cold as ice. Putting aside all prejudice and enmity, Meng Heng was indeed an outstanding Zongzi. He was gentle, elegant, and meticulous. Even if he couldn't bring the Meng family further, he wouldn't lose the support of the people like he did. Because of his indifference, the lowly concubine who gave birth to Meng Liang was promoted to a noble concubine and had the authority of a lady. As the eldest son, Meng Heng was in a difficult situation. Under such circumstances, the young Meng Heng was still able to find a way out for himself and go to Shangjing to study. Now that she thought about it, it was indeed extraordinary. Unfortunately, Meng Zhan had always thought that Meng Heng was a bastard. He thought that Meng Heng was proof that Gu Zhen had betrayed him. He didn't like him at all. If the family elders hadn't forced him to make Meng Heng the Zongzi, he might not have hated this child so much. The Mengs were a big family, how could they lack Meng Heng's food? However, Meng Heng had become the Zongzi and occupied a position that did not belong to him. The better Meng Heng behaved, the more Meng Liang looked like mud in comparison, the more Meng Zhan hated him. He saw Meng Heng as a disgrace that could never be erased. Meng Zhan suddenly remembered what Jiang Pengji said. Gu Zhen's second son, that second legitimate son, was really dead? Meng Zhan's face was sweating from the pain. His vision started to blur, but he still kept his eyes wide open and stared at Nie Sun. How could he forget this face? Nie Sun's appearance was extremely similar to Gu Zhen when she was young. He was full of vigor, and his eyebrows were in high spirits. It was unforgettable at a glance. The cinnabar mole between her eyebrows was bright red and round, as if it wanted to draw in all the gazes of others. At that moment, Meng Zhan guessed Nie Sun's identity. There was a bitter taste in his mouth, and an indescribable emotion wrapped around his heart and lungs. Although he didn't know Nie Sun's name, judging from his demeanor, he wasn't an ordinary person. Who would have thought? The two sons that he had abandoned with his own hands were both dragons and phoenixes among men. The bastard son that he had doted on like a jewel was actually useless. Retribution. This was retribution. Is this your revenge? Meng Zhan was supported by Meng Heng, but he did not look at his eldest son. Instead, he stared at Nie Sun's face, as if he was trying to see someone through his face. His voice was trembling and choked with sobs. Is this revenge on me? Is this what you want to see? Only then did Nie Sun come back to his senses. He stared blankly at his blood-stained hands. The blood was stuck to his skin, and some parts of his hands had already dried up. His heart was beating violently, and he was so flustered that he felt uncomfortable. His hands, which could burn incense and play the zither, were trembling uncontrollably. It wasn't that Nie Sun hadn't killed before, but he never thought he would kill Meng Zhan. His usually quick-witted brain was now like a rusty gear. Every time it turned, it would make a jerky, ear-piercing sound. Nie Sun's lips were trembling as he shouted to the side, "Doctor, get the doctor here." Meng Heng heard him and secretly clenched his fists. He peeked at Jiang Pengji, who was standing outside the crowd. It was not just because of the distance, but also because of something else. He could not see her expression clearly. "Fine, cough, forget it," Meng Zhan coughed weakly, and his lips curved into a sarcastic smile. Even when he was on the verge of death, he could quickly analyze that it was a trap. Jiang Pengji knew everything. Not only did she know about the past, but she also knew Nie Sun's identity. If not, why would she let Nie Sun and Meng Heng appear together in front of him? He had heard that Lu Shi's martial arts were superior, and that he could take the head of the enemy's general in the midst of an army of 10,000. With such skills, how could she not react to the situation just now? He was afraid that the situation was exactly what she wanted to see. She forced him to lose control of his emotions, tempted him to hurt Meng Heng, and finally let Nie Sun kill him. It was indeed a vicious plan. Lu Shi had no idea what kind of vicious daughter he had given birth to. At that moment, Meng Zhan finally saw how terrifying Jiang Pengji was. He felt a little scared. Wasn't she afraid that her plan would fail and that Meng Heng or Nie Sun would be hurt by him? Meng Zhan moved his eyes with difficulty, trying to find Jiang Pengji's figure. He was caught off guard and met her cold eyes. Jiang Pengji looked at him coldly, and her thin lips curled up. "Hurry up and call the doctor." Nie Sun clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. "Magistrate Lu," Jiang Pengji said indifferently, "it's too late. We can't save him." Nie Sun lost control of his emotions. He gritted his teeth and said, "How do you know it won't work if you don't try? If he doesn't die now, he will die in a few days. What's the difference between dying earlier or later?" Jiang Pengji looked down at Nie Sun coldly. "No. Nie Qingyun, there is a difference. Meng Zhan can die in the hands of anyone, but he can't." Before Jiang Pengji could finish her sentence, Meng Zhan, who was on the verge of death, suddenly pushed Meng Heng away. He held the sword in front of his chest with both of his hands and pushed it into his body. The blood that had just stopped gushing out like it was free. "Lu Shi! How dare you!" His eyes were wide open. Tiny cracks appeared at the corners of his eyes and beads of blood seeped out. The expression on his face was as terrifying as that of a ferocious ghost. After 2 breaths, there was a bang. Meng Zhan's skinny body fell to the side. He didn't rest in peace until his death. Everyone was shocked by the turn of events. They were all smart people. How could they not notice the strangeness of Meng Zhan's last move? He used up the last of his strength to interrupt Jiang Pengji. He must be hiding something. Feng Zhu glanced around calmly. From Jiang Pengji to Meng Heng, and then to Nie Sun, what secret did the 3 of them hide? Even if Jiang Pengji didn't finish her sentence, Feng Zhu could finish it. Meng Zhan could die in the hands of anyone, but what couldn't he? Connecting the dots, the most likely possibility was, but he couldn't die in the hands of Nie Sun. A scary thought rose in his heart. Feng Zhu's expression changed again. He looked at Nie Sun with a complicated gaze. No one spoke until Meng Hun broke the tense atmosphere. Although Meng Zhan has done many evil things, he is dead. Let's write off all the grudges he had when he was alive. Meng Zhan's life should have been left for him to reap. However, Meng Zhan's death in front of him could be considered as revenge. The page was turned over. Meng Heng's reaction was slow. When Meng Hun finished speaking, he said with a dry voice, "I beg my lord to allow me to collect his body. Although he deserved it, I had a father-son relationship with him for more than 20 years. I can't bear to see him die in the wilderness." Chapter 1084. Meng Heng stayed behind to collect Meng Zhan's body. Jiang Pengji left with the others, leaving Meng Heng alone. Everyone left except for Nie Sun. Meng Heng knelt until his knees were numb. It took him a while to regain his composure. From the corner of his eyes, he saw Nie Sun, whose expression he could not see clearly. "Qingyun, your arm is still injured. It's not suitable for you to stay in the damp and cold dungeon." He put Meng Zhan's cold body on the ground, opened his hands that were holding the sword, and uncurled his fingers one by one. Only then did Nie Sun return to his senses. His throat emitted a sound like that of a wild beast, as if he was suppressing a strong emotion. Wow, Nya Sun supported himself against the wall with his uninjured right hand and retched in discomfort. Meng Heng raised his hand and closed Nya Sun's eyes. He didn't seem to notice Nya Sun's abnormal reaction. What's your relationship with the Meng family? Nya Sun wiped the remaining stain on the corner of his mouth with the back of his hand and panted. I'm from the Nya family of Zhongzhao's Bian prefecture. How could I be related to the Meng family? The head of the Meng family committed suicide, and Xingyun accidentally injured him in order to protect him. None of this is your fault. Meng Heng's hand paused as if he was relieved. It's all thanks to Qingyun's help today. Otherwise, the one lying on the ground right now would be Heng. Nya Sun looked at Meng Heng's back with a complicated gaze. His usually straight back was now slightly bent. It was sad to see him all alone. I thought that Lu Prefecture Magistrate was a sentimental person, but after this incident, I realized that I was wrong, very wrong. Nya Sun left the dungeon and was not surprised to see Jiang Pengji. He stepped forward and said, Magistrate Lu, aren't you afraid of falling out with Shijiao by doing this? This is already the best situation. Cousin Heng is a smart man. He knows what's best for him. Jiang Pengji smiled. Meng Zhan's life can't be saved. If his death can be exchanged for the rest of the Mengs, wouldn't that be wonderful? Logically speaking, even if Meng Heng didn't hate her, there would still be some animosity between them. What was the price of doing so? The Meng family had no one to protect them. Meng Heng was generous and gentle, but that didn't mean he was a sentimental person. On the contrary, he was calm and rational. Meng Zhan is cousin Heng's biological father, but the father-son relationship between them has been eroded by Meng Zhan. Jiang Pengji looked at Nya Sun calmly and smiled. People's hearts are complicated, but they are also simple. If cousin Heng wants to blame me, I have nothing to say. When Nya Sun heard this, his Adam's apple bobbed a few times. He looked at Jiang Pengji with some shock. Why you've guessed my identity, haven't you? Nya Sun was almost sure that Jiang Pengji knew the truth. I'm afraid you don't know, but your face is very similar to my Shu aunt's. Many years ago, my aunt told me that her son, who died prematurely, was born with a cinnabar mole between his eyebrows. Jiang Pengji smiled. When I first saw you, I thought your face looked familiar. Later, I heard from Bogeo that you came to Dongqing to look for your relatives, and I began to suspect you. But I don't have any evidence, so I'm not sure. It wasn't until cousin Heng escaped from Cangzhou and you took extra care of him that I could be sure. What? Do you admire Meng Zhan? Nya Sun gritted his teeth and said, how is that possible? Meng Zhan didn't raise him, and he was cruel enough to let his illegitimate son take over his identity. He buried him, who was less than a month old, in the cold underground. If he had been a little unlucky, he would have lost his life long ago. To him, Meng Zhan was just a stranger who was related by blood. Jiang Pengji sneered. If that's the case, isn't it even more unreasonable for you to blame me? Nya Sun choked and couldn't speak. After a while, Nya Sun looked at his hands. The blood on them had dried up. You plotted to kill your father. Isn't the magistrate of Liuzhou afraid of revenge? Jiang Pengji said, you and I are on opposing sides. I have so many enemies. It doesn't matter if you're here or not. The winner is the king, and the loser is the bandit. If one day I become your prisoner, you can take my life as you wish. After saying that, Jiang Pengji walked past Nya Sun and left without looking back. She didn't walk far before she saw a familiar figure standing at the end of the long street from afar. Warmth rose in her heart. She didn't need others to understand her, but if someone was willing to open their hearts to her, that would be the biggest gain. It was a special time, and Meng Zhan was a prisoner. His funeral had to be simple. But when Meng Zhan's coffin was buried, Meng Heng had lost a lot of weight. His clothes that fit him looked empty. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, no one from the Mengs came to the funeral. The funeral procession looked sparse and desolate. If Wei Ci, Feng Zhen, and the others hadn't attended the funeral for Meng Heng, it would have been even more desolate. Jiang Pengji didn't attend, but without her secret support, Meng Zhan's mourning hall would have been smashed by the people of Meng County. I wonder what good things Meng Zhan did in his past life. He's done so many bad things in this life, but he still has a good son to send him off. Meng Han's revenge was avenged, but the knot in his heart wasn't so easily resolved. If nothing had happened to his wife and daughter, he would have a grandson by now and become a happy and peaceful father-in-law. Feng Zhen smiled as he poured wine for Meng Han and filled up his own goblet. Officer Meng, why don't you have another wife? You've already avenged your wife and niece. It's time for you to move on. The dead are gone, but the living are like this. They can only rest in peace if you live a good life. Meng Han shook his head. He didn't want to have another wife. He just wanted to be loyal to his lord and repay him for saving his life. Feng Zhen said casually, Meng Zhan is dead. The grudge from back then has finally come to an end. Meng Han snorted and put down the goblet. Sure, you don't have to beat around the bush. I'm a rough guy. Just say what you want to say. Feng Zhen didn't feel awkward. Instead, he smiled. Since Officer Meng has spoken, I'll speak the truth. The trouble Meng Zhan caused shouldn't involve his children. My lord will treat the Meng's branch family lightly. I'm letting you know about this in case you feel uncomfortable. Plus, Shurjiu is my lord's cousin. He's talented and will be put in an important position in the future. Officer Meng and him. It was a big taboo to not be on good terms with each other. Meng Han was silent for a while and asked, Is this what my lord wants? Feng Zhen smiled. No, my lord. I'm just guessing. Meng Han downed the wine in the goblet and snorted. Meng Shurjiu has been with my lord for a while. Have I ever made things difficult for him? Feng Zhen cupped his hands and said respectfully, Officer Meng is broad-minded. You're thinking too much. I'll drink this as a punishment. Meng Han raised his hand to stop him and said angrily, There's only one jar of good wine. How much do you want to drink? After the funeral, Meng Heng immediately changed out of his mourning clothes. He wore plain clothes with a plain white belt around his waist. That night, he went to look for Jiang Pengji. I thought Cousin Heng would come looking for me earlier. Chapter 1085. Master, Meng Heng was about to bow, but Jiang Pengji stopped him. There are no outsiders here. You don't have to call me Cousin Heng in private. Meng Heng shook his head and said sternly, Etiquette cannot be ignored. Although Heng is the Lord's cousin, he cannot easily overstep his boundaries. No matter how good their relationship was, it could not withstand the slightest neglect and rudeness. Meng Heng did not want today's intimacy to become rudeness in the future. Jiang Pengji secretly rolled her eyes and sighed. Cousin Heng is good in every aspect, but he's too cautious. Meng Heng did not say anything. This cautiousness and politeness were deeply ingrained in his bones. It was not something that could be changed in a short time. If he hadn't been careful and meticulous, he probably wouldn't have lived to this age. Jiang Pengji grabbed a table and leaned half of her body on it. She asked casually, What does Cousin Heng want to know? Meng Heng was definitely not looking for him for official business. It was most likely related to the dungeon incident. I'm very happy that Cousin Heng still chose to trust me. Jiang Pengji smiled. If Meng Heng was unhappy, he could ask Nie Sun, but he didn't. Instead, he waited until Meng Zhan's funeral was over. Since Cousin Heng treats me with sincerity, I can't lie to you. Meng Heng sat upright, like a green bamboo that would not bend in the face of wind and rain. His tenacity and integrity were what Jiang Pengji admired. Nie Qingyun, he's the Meng family patriarch's lost pearl in the vast ocean? Meng Heng had already guessed that Nie Sun was related to him by blood, but he had not guessed that Nie Sun was his younger brother from the same mother. Jiang Pengji sighed. It's a long story. I'm afraid that cousin Heng doesn't know that Meng Liang isn't my aunt's child. What? Meng Heng widened his eyes in shock. Jiang Pengji said, back then, my aunt and Meng Zhan's concubine were pregnant at the same time. They gave birth to a son almost at the same time. Meng Zhan didn't want to mistreat the concubine's child, so he allowed the concubine to swap the concubine. The Shu aunt's real child was replaced by a concubine and died in less than 2 days. The maidservant buried the baby carelessly. Luckily, a passing maidservant dug it out and sold it to Zhongzhao. Meng Heng's clenched fists trembled uncontrollably. At that moment, he was almost speechless. Nya Sun, he's that child? No wonder, Meng Zhan, Meng Liang, and the concubine were like a family. However, Meng Heng had always wondered why his father let the concubine raise his second son. This was the crux of the problem. I think, Shu aunt probably didn't want your situation in the Meng residence to become more difficult, so she didn't tell you these old matters. Jiang Pengji took a sip of the sake. The bland taste of the wine spread in her mouth, carrying a tinge of bitterness. At first, I didn't recognize Nya Sun's identity. I just felt that his silhouette resembled someone, but I couldn't remember who that person was. After that, I heard that Nya Sun was very close to you and took good care of you. Nya Sun came to Dongqing to look for his family. Only then did I confirm his identity. He was the real Meng Liang. Meng Heng shook his head. No, Nya Sun is Nya Sun. How can the name Meng Liang tarnish him? Meng Heng could not remain calm after receiving too much information in such a short period of time. My lord, you already knew of Nya Sun's identity. Then, did you also deliberately facilitate the dungeon incident? Jiang Pengji smiled. Cousin Heng, are you bitterly disappointed? Are you suspecting that I deliberately pushed you into a dead end? Meng Heng shook his head weakly. He looked listless, as if he had been drained of all his energy. My lord, you are highly skilled in martial arts. You were not far away at that time, but you were watching from the sidelines. It shows that you were confident. Meng Liang's sudden outburst was not something that could be controlled by an outsider. I'm just not sure. Did you want me to kill Meng Liang in your plan? Jiang Pengji frowned. Let you kill him? What's the difference between that and crippling you myself? Meng Heng was different from Nya Sun. If Meng Heng accidentally killed Meng Zhan, he might be depressed for the rest of his life. My lord, you want to cripple Nya Sun? Cousin Heng, are you soft-hearted? Humans are not plants. How can we be emotionless? Meng Heng did not deny it. He really had a good impression of Nya Sun. Nya Sun looked very similar to his mother, which made them feel closer. Meng Heng was surprised and happy to hear that Meng Liang was his biological brother. He could not bring himself to do it. Meng Heng's lips moved. His eyes were filled with complexity and struggle. Although they were not brothers, Meng Heng could not cripple Nya Sun as soon as they met. Jiang Pengji sneered. Nye Qingyun is not cousin Heng. His heart is much colder than you think. As a father, he gave birth to him but did not raise him. To him, Meng Zhan was not only not his father, but also his mortal enemy. He offered advice to Bogeo many times and made trouble for me many times. This incident in the dungeon can not only end the grudge between me and Meng Zhan, but it can also serve as a warning to Nya Sun. I have done this with a clear conscience. If I had to apologize, it would be cousin Heng. No matter how bad he is still your father. Was Nya Sun allowed to plot against her, but she was not allowed to? Moreover, Jiang Pengji's real purpose was to let Meng Zhan die with everlasting regret. Nya Sun was just a convenience. How could Meng Heng agree? What Meng Zhan had done was not just about personal grudges. It was about the country. It was enough to drag the entire Mengs into eternal damnation. Even if Meng Heng still had a trace of father-son relationship in his heart, he would not lose his head and plead for Meng Zhan. The Lord was willing to be honest with him. It was already a rare trust. Jiang Pengji did not force him. Meng Heng would think it through. After a while, Meng Heng said, "Lord, what about the previous arrangements?" He had wanted to sow discord between Huang Song and Nie Sun. He wanted to use Nie Sun as a breakthrough point to split them from the inside and cause discord between them. Now that this had happened, of course it has to continue. But I am not a cold-hearted person. If Cousin Heng is unwilling, I will not force you. Meng Heng shook his head. He did not bring up this matter to quit midway. It is most appropriate for Heng to handle this matter. The Lord has given Heng an important task, and Heng will repay it as a national hero. Meng Heng was not stupid. The struggle for hegemony was not a child's play. One careless move and he would lose everything. Feng Jin and Feng Ju parted ways because of this. What did he and Nie Sun count for? Meng Heng's side was solved, but Nie Sun's troubles had just begun. After that day in the dungeon, Feng Ju told Huang Song about his speculation. Huang Song was stunned. You mean? Qingyun is from the Mengs, and he is Meng Heng's younger brother? Why would he hide such an important matter from me? Most likely. It would be fine if Nie Sun was not in the know, but Yuan Xian had told Huang Song that Nie Sun called Meng Heng elder brother. Considering Nie Sun's reaction in the dungeon, Meng Heng obviously knew about it, but he did not want to make it public. What was his motive? Song is happy for Qingyun that he has found his family. Is there a need to hide it like this? The more he thought about it, the more Huang Song felt uncomfortable. Feng Ju said, "Lord, this matter is of great importance. Please make a conclusion after further investigation." Chapter 1086. The matter between Nie Sun and Meng Heng had been resolved smoothly, but only the people involved knew whether or not it was over. Huang Song still held a grudge. Who asked Nie Sun to deceive them first? Even though Huang Song did not show it clearly, Nie Sun was a shrewd person. He felt somewhat bitter in his heart. Nie Sun had mixed feelings as he watched Meng Heng visit him every few days. He had something to say, but he didn't know whether he should say it or not. Aren't you afraid that Lu Shi will suspect something? Nie Sun finally couldn't hold it in any longer and probed. If Heng distanced herself from you, Master would be suspicious. You and I have a clean relationship, so there's no need to hide it. It'll only make people gossip. Meng Heng let out a bitter laugh, as if he had his own difficulties. According to the logic of ordinary people, brothers who had finally reunited with each other should naturally be on good terms with each other. How could they not contact each other until death? Before they acknowledged each other, their relationship was already pretty good. Now that they were related by blood, there was no reason for them to drift apart. Nie Sun was at a loss for words. Meng Heng was like a piece of sticky candy that came to him of his own accord. He had not been able to get rid of him before, but now, he would stick to him even if he did. Right now, the most troublesome thing was not personal affairs, but the activity outside Zhangjiang Pass and Yumen Pass. After the Meng's manor was raided, the letters between Meng Zhan, the Nies of Zhongzhou, and the Yis of Beiyuan were also exposed. Not only was the Mengs pushed to the teeth of the storm again, but the grim situation at the border was also on the table of Jiang Pengji and Huang Song. If the two of them fought, others would definitely take advantage of it. The best solution was for the two families to continue to form an alliance and help each other. Only then would the Zhongzhou Nie clan and the Beiyuan Yi clan not dare to act rashly. When Feng Ju visited Jiang Pengji on behalf of Huang Song, the audience in the streaming room exploded before she could. Suega, I've been following the live stream for so many years, but this is the first time I've felt so aggrieved. The streamer is the one who has been wronged. Not only did she not give her personal space to heal her wounds, but Huang Song shamelessly came up to her and wanted to form an alliance with her to fight against the enemy. Shenjia, I've been a bit depressed lately. Although I've gotten back some face from Meng Zhan, I'm still not happy. Fei, the streamer's ultimate move takes a long time to charge up. Mushroom soup hot pot, calm down. This has happened a lot in history. Our boss Chao, because of his lust, played with Mrs. Zhou, the widow of Zhang Xiu's uncle, which led to Zhang Xiu's betrayal. His eldest son Chao Ang, nephew Chao Anmin, and General Dian Wei were all killed. What was the result? Didn't Boss Chao treat poison warrior Jia Su as his precious eyeball? Jia Su was the only one among Boss Chao's many advisors who died of old age. The grievances that the host has suffered are not even 1/10,000th of what Boss Chao has suffered, so it is not considered bitter. Lo CG Lianmeng, #PickNose1. The streamer wouldn't play the role of a widower who has been defeated by a general. As the audience chattered on, the topic of conversation began to stray to an unseemly degree. Jiang Pengji was calm and composed. She was not affected at all. Feng Zhu looked at the big picture and hoped that the two families could let go of the past and defend the land of Dongqing together under the banner of righteousness. Naturally, she couldn't undermine him. Even if Huang Song hadn't mentioned it, Jiang Pengji would have suggested consolidating the alliance. Now that Huang Song took the initiative to bring it up, the effect was better. Feng Zhu had a bad premonition that the lobbying this time was going too smoothly. He went back and passed the message to Huang Song. Huang Song also expressed that something was wrong. He kept pacing, almost making a hole in the ground. Lanting's temperament is, to put it nicely, serious. To put it bluntly, she's calculative and vengeful. After suffering such a big loss, the more generous she is and the more unfussy I am, the more uneasy I feel. I have a feeling that she's holding back some tricks. Huang Song felt uneasy, but according to the scouts' report, whether it was the 5,000 elites in Meng County or the army stationed at the border of Qianyan County, all of them were well behaved. Feng Zhu thought so too. Jiang Pengji had left a deep shadow in their hearts when she was young. They couldn't help but overthink it. By the way, about Qingyun, is he still close to Mengheng? Feng Zhu said, the two of them are friends. My lord, you can't listen to Yuan Sun's words and ruin the harmony between the civil and military officials. He didn't know what kind of temper Yuan Xian had. He kept his eyes on Nie Sun and refused to let go. No matter how loyal a person was, he couldn't stand such suspicion. The more Yuan Xian did this, the further Nie Sun would be pushed away. Thinking of this, Feng Zhu felt some resentment towards Yuan Xian. He was a dignified general, but instead of thinking about killing the enemy and being loyal, he kept his eyes on such a small matter. His vision was too narrow. Huang Song responded vaguely, but only he knew if he took it in. Before Nie Sun's identity was exposed, Huang Song naturally believed him. No matter how much Yuan Xian talked, he never wavered. Ever since he found out that Nie Sun was deliberately deceiving him, Huang Song had a grudge. This grudge was very, very small, but it was a seed of suspicion. It took root fiercely. Yuan Xian snitched on him every now and then, which became the best nourishment for the seed to germinate. One day, it would grow into a towering tree. Seeing Nie Sun go to the big pit and never return, Wei Ci felt even more sorry for Yang Si. What was the connection between the two? In his previous life, Yang Si had been harmed by his lord by sowing discord. In the end, he had no choice but to be recruited by his lord. Speaking of Jing Rong, there should be good news coming from his side soon, right? Jiang Pengji had been in Meng County for some time. No matter how good it was still Huang Song's territory. It was needless to say that it was dangerous. She refused to move because she wanted to cover for Yang Si and Dian Yen. In ancient times, the transmission of information was very slow. Even if it was 800 miles at top speed, it still needed a certain amount of time. Qinzhou and Sangzhou were separated by the rapid Song River. As long as they seized this important route in advance, the news would be pushed back again and again. When Huang Song received the news that Yang Si and Dian Yen had brought troops to Qinzhou, the situation was basically settled. She wanted to see who would be the one to suffer in silence in the end. Meng Zhan bore the crime of regicide and cleared the way for Huang Song. In the end, the person who would reap the rewards would be her, Jiang Pengji. Wei Ci came back to his senses and said, looking at the time, "It's almost time." Jiang Pengji took a sip of fragrant tea and smiled like a fox. "Jing Rong will not let me down." Wei Ci stayed at the side with mixed feelings. In both previous lives, Yang Si had not been able to get rid of his lord. It was clearly fate. Time is still too short. Wei Ci could not help but say something good for Yang Si. If Yang Si did not achieve the expected goal, he hoped that Jiang Pengji would be lenient. After all, Yang Si was already pitiful enough. He had been unexpectedly sent to Hu County by Jiang Pengji for several years. He had been dealing with Su Pei's elite, Hanyu, all year round. Now he had to lead troops from thousands of miles away to help Qinzhou. Not only did he have to be fast and efficient, but he also had to do it quietly so that the news would not reach Huang Song's ears in advance. He had not lived an easy life in this life. He never expected that before Yang Si's news came, the messenger from the Nie family of Zhongzhou had already arrived. Fortunately, the messenger from the Yi family of Beiyuan is still on the way. Otherwise, when the two families meet, it will be a bloody battlefield. Meng Zhan had asked for it. He had promised Sangzhou to two big shots, and then he had given Sangzhou to a third person. Chapter 1087. Although the Azura arena had yet to take place, the emissary from the Nie clan was about to explode with rage. Meng Zhan wrote a letter to the Nie family in Bianzhou, Zhongzhou. On one hand, he criticized the current situation, analyzed the general trend of the world, and pointed out the current shortage of the Nie family. On the other hand, he confessed the predicament the Meng family was in. After much persuasion, they finally proposed the terms of the deal. As long as the Nie clan gave the Meng clan protection and other benefits, the Meng clan would give up Sangzhou. Once they had Sangzhou, it meant that they would have a strong base to produce horses. Rather than saying that this was an equal exchange between the two families, it was more accurate to say that the Meng family was using Sangzhou as a bargaining chip in exchange for the Nie family's protection. The Nie clan was located in Zhongzhou, but they were also concerned about the situation of the various countries. The Meng clan of Sangzhou had been declining in recent years, and their influence was indeed not as great as it used to be. If the Meng family was just an ordinary landowning family, they could simply find a feudal lord to rely on or abide by the law, and they would not be affected. Unfortunately, the Meng family controlled Sangzhou, and the Sangzhou horse farm was a big cake that everyone coveted. Even if the Meng family behaved themselves, Chaoyang would find trouble with them and drag them into the whirlpool of the world struggle. After thinking about all this, the Nie clan didn't doubt Meng Zhan's letter. They immediately sent their elite disciples to Zhangjiang Pass as messengers. Who would have thought that when they showed the token that Meng Zhan had given them, the guard of Zhangjiang would make all sorts of excuses? The emissary of the Nie clan was keenly aware that something was wrong. He secretly sent someone to inquire about the situation inside the pass. "You're going too far." Meng Zhan begged the Mengs for help like a stray dog, but now he's changed his mind. Is the Mengs really a pushover? The royal family of Zhongzhou no longer existed. Currently, there were many feudal vassals standing side by side. Among them, the Nie family was the strongest. The Nie clan's advantages and disadvantages were obvious. If they could take Sangzhou, it would be of great strategic importance to them. Tsang Prefecture's horse farm was vast and rich in warhorses. The quality of the warhorses was comparable to that of the northern borderline. Zhangjiang Pass was Dongqing's natural stronghold. The terrain was extremely steep, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. If the Nie family could obtain Sangzhou, it would mean that Zhangjiang Pass would be useless. The Nie family could use Sangzhou as a stepping stone to develop their troops and conquer the hinterland of Dongqing. This was the second reason. What about now? All the sweet dreams had turned into smoke. The Nie family had been fooled by Meng Zhan. The envoy from the Nia clan was furious. His cousin frowned and said hesitantly, it might not be Meng Zhan who sent them out of Tsangzhou. They only heard that the 3 counties of Tsang Prefecture were divided between the Huang and Lu families. Apart from that, they did not hear anything else. Perhaps the Huang and Lu families had joined hands to attack Tsangzhou? The corner of the Nia clan's messenger's mouth twitched. He looked at his cousin as if he was an idiot. If Meng Zhan hadn't surrendered voluntarily or sent him out of Tsangzhou, the war would have affected Zhangjiang Pass. We would have had to transfer troops. But when we stayed at Zhangjiang Pass for several days, the soldiers here were not sick or injured, and there were no signs of fighting near the pass. It can be seen that Huang Song did not waste a single soldier in taking Zhangjiang Pass. Oh, I see. The man nodded and said, so, we've been tricked by Meng Zhan. Only now did he react? The Nia clan envoys were speechless. We can't let this matter go so easily. If word of this gets out, the Nia family of Zhongzhou will lose its dignity. Losing face was one thing, but the key was that if they missed this opportunity, it would be more difficult for the Nia family to touch the land of Dongqing. While the power in Tsangzhou was not stable, the Nia family could take the opportunity to pressure the border Zhangjiang Pass and form an alliance with the Huang and Lu families. Let's send a letter to Bianzhou and see what the Lord decides. The Nia clan envoy's letter was sent back to the country. The Nia clan had the same idea as them. Even if they couldn't get the whole Tsangzhou, they had to get Meng County. Or else? If the soft approach didn't work, they could use the hard approach. Huang Song and Lu Shi's power was not stable. Could they still hold Zhangjiang Pass? After receiving the order, the Nia clan envoys were full of confidence. They put pressure on the general guarding Zhangjiang Pass. They had used tough diplomatic language. Huang Song couldn't continue to pretend to be deaf and dumb. He could only send people to welcome the envoys into Tsangzhou. The leader of the Nia clan envoys was a direct descendant of the Nia clan. His surname was Nia, and his name was Liang. He was in his 30s. He was elegant and elegant. He wore a black Confucian robe with a thin coat over it. It was the standard attire of an aristocrat. On the right of Nia Liang stood a man in green with a warm temperament. He looked thin and charming. He was also a dragon among men. If the viewers in the live broadcast room were to give them a score, it would be at least 85, if not more than 90 points. Not only were they good-looking, but their temperament was not something ordinary people could learn. They could be recognized in a crowd. Huang Song was a man who liked good looks. He knew that the two of them represented the Nia clan of Zhongzhou. But when he saw their faces, he had a good impression of them. Nia Liang didn't chat with Huang Song for long. He directly expressed his intention. He took out Meng Zhan's letter and reminded Huang Song of one thing. Meng Zhan had promised Tsangzhou to the Nia clan of Zhongzhou. This land was theirs. Huang Song had no problem taking it, but he had to weigh his own bones. He had to see if he could protect Tsangzhou. Instead of the two clans fighting, it was better to be sensible and leave Tsangzhou. Otherwise, they would fight each other. Nia Liang's words were tactful, but Huang Song acted like he didn't understand and tried to change the topic. Sir, you have traveled a long way from Zhongzhou. You must be tired. Why don't you let me be the host? Sir, you can rest in your bed. As for what you mentioned, I don't know the inside story. I will give you an explanation after I find out. Nia Liang narrowed his eyes and agreed with a faint smile on his face as if he was a jack of all trades. Evasive words. He wanted to see what other tricks Huang Song had up his sleeve. They could also use this time to understand the situation in Tsangzhou. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Huang Song stood up to see him off. Just as he left the main tent, Nia Liang saw a familiar figure. Ah Sun. He was surprised. He turned to Huang Song and asked, "Is that Qingyun?" Huang Song was also surprised. "Sir, you know Qingyun?" On the other side, Nie Sun also found someone who shouldn't be in Sangzhou. Nie Liang said, Liang and Qingyun are classmates in the family school. Of course we know each other. After he finished speaking, Nie Sun came forward to greet him. Huang Song then remembered that Nie Sun was the adopted son of the Nie family in Zhongzhou. It was possible that he knew the Nie family's envoy. Nie Liang said to Nie Sun, I heard from my uncle that you came to Dongqing to look for your relatives. You haven't returned for many years. Have you found your relatives now? Nie Sun smiled bitterly. It's hard to explain. I didn't mean to hide it. It's really hard to tell. Nie Liang knew he had his reasons. He didn't probe further and asked in private. The next day, Huang Song hosted a banquet for the Nie family's envoy and sent an invitation to Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji accepted it gladly. It would be a waste not to eat a free meal. But, she realized that after the banquet started, Wei Xi's gaze kept drifting toward the Nie family's envoy. Is there a beauty or a peerless beauty over there that makes Zixiao restless? Chapter 1088. Wei Xi was caught red-handed by Jiang Pengji. Listening to her sarcastic words, he felt a little funny in his heart. He said, My lord, I seem to have seen my eldest brother. Eldest brother? Jiang Pengji asked in surprise, Isn't Zixiao the only son? Wei Xi smiled bitterly and said, Of course not. I have 2 eldest brothers. My eldest brother is 5 years older than me. To me, he is like a brother and a father. Because of his birth date, Wei Xi was despised by the Wei clan. If Master Yuanjing had not stopped him, the weeds on Wei Xi's grave would have changed a few times. Although he survived, he was abandoned by the clan at a young age. Life was hard and he had a cold body. Even so, there were people who treated Wei Xi well, such as his eldest brother, Wei Chang. Wei Xi's initiation was even helped by him. Jiang Pengji asked curiously, Where is he? Not only was Jiang Pengji curious, but the audience in the streaming room was also very curious. Looking at Beauty Xi's appearance and temperament, one could tell how good the genes of the Wei family were. Wei Xi's elder brother was certainly not bad. Jiang Pengji could not look for him openly, but the audience did not have such concerns. They could not wait to pull out everyone in the tent to take a look. Waji er Xiaolong Bao, I found him. Look at this, isn't it? Except for the Nie family's diplomatic group, everyone knows him. Fireworks era, are you kidding me? Didn't Huang Song introduce his name at the beginning of the banquet? His name is Nie Liang. Chiue Bo He, #propping chin. Nie Liang is such a good name. I also like Nie Liang. Feng Shui Wuhan, you missed one person. Does the man beside Nie Liang look like him? I bet a spicy stick that it's definitely him. The audience searched carefully. Jiang Pengji also found a suspicious target. She turned to ask Wei Xi. The one beside Nie Liang? Wei Xi nodded and said, That's my elder brother. Jiang Pengji said expressionlessly, TSK. It's not the charaba, but it's better than the charaba. Wei Xi did not understand, but seeing Jiang Pengji's expression, he did not ask further. It was certainly not an important matter. He didn't understand, but the audience did. Shenjia, Nie Sun and Meng Heng are brothers. Feng Ju and Feng Jin are brothers. Wei Xi and Wei Dan are brothers. Nie Sun even knows Nie Liang. They're not brothers, but they're more like brothers. They're from 3 different camps. Brothers stabbing each other's hearts. Isn't that the charaba? Mo's Hang Yunxiu, #picknose. So, the struggle in troubled times is a disguised fight between relatives? Wei Xi's gaze was too obvious. Wei Yong, who was on the other side, also noticed his presence. A look of astonishment flashed across her eyes. Zi Shun, did you meet an acquaintance? Nie Liang held a wine goblet in his hand as he looked at the dancers dancing below the banquet. His body tilted slightly towards Wei Yong. It seems to be the youngest brother. Wei Ci was not very sure. It was dark inside the tent and Wei Ci was quite far away from him, so he could not see clearly. Is he the younger brother that you always talk about, Wei Ci? Why is he here? Niel Yang frowned. If Wei Ci was here, he would either be in Huang Song's camp or Lu Shi's camp. This was not good news. I heard you say that he stayed in Langyi alone to study. Considering his age, Zi Shao should be over 27 this year. Wei Yong had a fitting smile on his face. He's always had his own ideas and is very stubborn. Whether it's Huang Song or Lu Shi, they both have their strengths and weaknesses. It's not impossible for Zi Shao to choose one of them to become an official. The Wei family of Langyi was in decline. They had no choice but to move out of Langyi County and seek refuge with the Wei family in Zhongzhao's Bianzhou. Everyone shared the same ancestor. Even if they had to live under someone else's roof, it was better than their family declining. Only Wei Ci did not agree and insisted on staying. As a last resort, the Wei family could only leave Wei Ci with some money and let him run his own course. They had not received any news from him all these years. As they talked, Niel Yang secretly inspected the people in the tent, as if trying to find out which younger brother of Wei Yong was. Wei Ci's appearance was outstanding. He would be the most conspicuous in a crowd. Naturally, it was easy to find him. From the looks of it, your precious younger brother has chosen Lu Shi to become an official. Niel Yang smiled. His eyebrows and eyes are somewhat similar to Zi Shun's. Wei Yong was not surprised by the result. He was rather curious about Jiang Pengji, who was in the limelight. Jiang Pengji's reputation was great in Dongqing. Outside of Dongqing's territory, others would always question the rumors about her. How could a woman be so valiant? Suspicion was bound to be accompanied by contempt. Although Niel Yang and Wei Yong did not belittle her, they were also dubious. Rumors could not be completely trusted, not to mention rumors that were spread by word of mouth and were seriously distorted. It was easy to find Wei Ci in the main tent, but it was even easier to find Jiang Pengji. She was the only red flower among the green leaves in the tent. The atmosphere of the banquet was just right. After 3 rounds of wine, Niel Yang once again brought up the issue of the ownership of Cangzhou. Huang Song laughed and laughed, but Jiang Pengji said, "The words of a living person don't carry much weight, let alone the words of a dead person. It's been a while since the 7th day of Meng Zhan's death. If he was faster, he might have already drunk Meng Po's soup and crossed the bridge of helplessness. Dead people tell no tales." Niel Yang's expression suddenly darkened. Without waiting for him to speak, Wei Ci, who was beside him, helped to add. Compared to Jiang Pengji's angry tone, his words were much more polite, but also irritating. Meng Zhan is a criminal who killed the emperor, and he is the eternal sinner of Dongqing. How can the Mengs call themselves the ruler of Cangzhou? This is the first reason. The royal family trusts the Mengs, which is why the Mengs are allowed to stay in Cangzhou. After all, the Mengs are still the subjects of the royal family, not the ruler. This is the second reason. Meng Zhan has no right to decide the ownership of Cangzhou. Even if the letter in the messenger's hand is real, the people of Cangzhou will not recognize it. Even if the royal family had been killed by Meng Zhan, Wei Ci would still use him as a shield. Niel Yang looked expressionless, but he was secretly giving Wei Yong a look. Wei Yong's younger brother was indeed not a good person. He was stabbed by his brother before they even recognized each other. Such brotherly love was really tearful. If that's the case, Magistrate Lu and Magistrate Huang want to push the blame and refuse to acknowledge the debt, right? Jiang Pengji shook the wine bottle gently and leaned against the table. You can't say that. The person who owes the debt is Meng Zhan, not me or Bogeo. As the saying goes, every debt has its debtor. If the Nies want to collect the debt, they have to find a creditor. If they are quick, they can find a master to summon the soul. The world is in chaos now, and the road to the underworld is blocked. Maybe Meng Zhan hasn't had the time to reincarnate. It's hard to say. Niel Yang was speechless. He heard that Lu Shi was born in a gentry family, but he didn't expect to meet him in person and act like a hooligan. He was so persistent that it was unheard of. Wei Ci, who was beside him, noticed his brother Wei Yong's gaze. He didn't want to delve into the deeper meaning of that gaze, so he simply closed his eyes and pretended to be dead. If that's the case, Magistrate Lu and Magistrate Huang don't want to give up Cangzhou? Jiang Pengji smiled faintly. I am from Dongqing. How can I betray my country? She wouldn't even give up a small hut, let alone Cangzhou. It was really asking the wrong person to talk to her about the issue of territory. Jiang Pengji's eyes were burning. She wasn't afraid at all. Huang Song, who was the temporary owner of Cangzhou, became a foil. He stayed at the side and cheered for Jiang Pengji. Chapter 1089. The magistrate of Liuzhou is loyal to the emperor and loves his country. Liang is impressed. Even though his heart was in turmoil, Niel Yang remained calm on the surface. It was as if he did not notice Jiang Pengji's arrogance and fearlessness. He had seen many such stubborn people, but in the face of absolute profit, even the gentry would bow down. As the saying goes, it's easy to invite a god in, but it's hard to send him away. The Nia family had already entered the game. How could they leave empty-handed? The current situation was clear. Cangzhou was too big, and the people who coveted it were too strong. Whether it was Huang Song or Lu Shi, they could not defend Cangzhou with their individual strength. Not only could they not defend it, but they would also get themselves killed. Instead of being greedy and occupying the entire Cangzhou, they might as well retreat in order to advance and give some of the benefits to the Nia family. They could gain the most benefits with the least amount of effort. Niel Yang smiled faintly and bowed with his hands folded in front. It seemed like a compliment, but the smile on his lips was meaningful. Loyal to the emperor and love his country? As the most powerful feudal lord in Dongqing, Jiang Pengji obviously had an army. The words, loyal to the emperor and love his country, were a mockery. Jiang Pengji would smile faintly and raise the wine bottle in her right hand to toast Niel Yang, shamelessly accepting his compliment. You flatter me. Even though the royal family is declining, it is my duty to defend the land and protect the people. I dare not forget it for a moment. So what if she was a rebel and a traitor who had an army? Jiang Pengji asked herself if she was worthy of the land under her feet and the people living on it. That was enough. Furthermore, what the Nia family had done in Zhongzhou was no better than what she had done. The two were about the same. Did the crow want to laugh at the pig? Jiang Pengji was about to expose the Nia family's past. Wei Ci saw her eyes turn cold. His heart skipped a beat. He could vaguely guess what she wanted to say. If she really said it, wouldn't she offend the Nia family? Wei Ci secretly tugged on Jiang Pengji's sleeve. She seemed to feel it and swallowed the words she was about to say. I have something to say. If I offended you in any way, please forgive me. Before Niel Yang could say anything threatening, Wei Ci smiled and continued Jiang Pengji's words. Birds of a feather flock together. Forgive me for my rudeness, but a traitor like Meng Zhan is rare in the world. This person did not think of the emperor's kindness and preyed on the people, causing the people under his rule to have no way to live. For his own personal gain, he actually betrayed Cangzhou. In the future, he would be recorded in the history books as a treacherous official who would go down in infamy for thousands of years. Ci had heard that the Nia family of Zhongzhou was a truly noble and distinguished family. They had been around for hundreds of generations and had nurtured countless sages and famous scholars, celebrities and capable officials. With such a powerful family background, how could he collude with those treacherous officials and villains for the sake of temporary benefits? Jiang Pengji was in charge of acting like a hooligan, while Wei Ci was in charge of adding insult to injury. With the two of them working together, wouldn't those with weaker mental endurance be angered to the point of vomiting blood? Wei Yong, who was sitting next to Niao Yang, did not make a sound from beginning to end, but a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. His memory of Wei Ci was still stuck at 8 or 9 years ago. The youth, who was barely in his 20s, was like an old monk, calm and uninteresting. Now that they met again, he seemed a little sharper. From the looks of it, he had experienced many things over the years and matured quite a bit. Wei Yong's heart was filled with the feeling of having a younger brother who had just grown up. He smiled and said, "This sounds reasonable, but it's sophistry." Huang Song took the opportunity to shift his gaze to Wei Yong and asked in a seemingly surprised manner, "This is?" Niao Yang said, "This is Liang's close friend. His surname is Wei, his given name is Yong, and his courtesy name is Sichuan." Hearing Wei Yong's name and courtesy name, everyone in the tent could not help but shift their gaze to Wei Ci. Whether it was their surname, first name or courtesy name, they looked like brothers no matter how they looked at it. Faintly, everyone felt that they had grasped the truth. This was another pair of plastic brothers. Huang Song said with a smile, "How is it sophistry? I heard that Mr. Zixiao is very reasonable." Wei Yong said, "Now that there are 5 countries in the world, Nanxing has been destroyed, the 4 factions of Nanman are vainly trying to overthrow the orthodoxy, Dongqing's royal family is declining, and Zhongzhou is not far behind. The remaining Beiyuan and Xichang are in turmoil within their borders. China is divided, feudal lords are rising, barbarian horses are trampling, and rebellious officials are domineering. This is the sign of a chaotic world. At present, only the arrival of the Holy Emperor can turn the tide and help the Xia kingdom. People say that those who speak benevolently die, while those who are ambitious and ruthless prosper. I also despise Meng Zhan's actions. However, are the people guilty? My lord has no other intentions, he just wants to protect the innocent people and prevent them from being plunged into misery and suffering. The district magistrate also said that protecting the people is part of his duty. As long as it can protect the people, why can't I sacrifice myself?" As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the tent was like a cold current rushing through, and the temperature dropped by several degrees. Jiang Pengji restrained her frivolous attitude, and there was a hint of sternness in her eyes. "This gentleman is really eloquent," Wei Yong replied calmly, "every word and sentence is from the bottom of my heart." Who would believe that? Although she was choked back, Jiang Pengji was not embarrassed or annoyed. Instead, she revealed a calm smile, as if she did not care. The atmosphere in the tent indirectly affected the audience in the streaming room. When Jiang Pengji displayed her hooligan attitude, many fans and fangirls cheered for her crazily. This was the streamer they were familiar with, who would make people cry at the slightest disagreement. Jiang Pengji and Wei Ci, their tacit understanding was too high. They were indeed the most popular couple in the streaming room. Jieshou Meishu, can a language class representative translate this young man's words? I feel that his words are strange. After following the streaming for so many years, they realized that the people in the streaming room usually conversed in the vernacular, not the pure classical Chinese that they had imagined. Even so, on certain occasions, their dialogue was still very difficult to listen to. Muzixiangyang, Brother Wei's words are not difficult to understand. To put it simply, this young man trampled on the streamer and supported the Nye family. Now that the world is in chaos, those who are capable will be in charge. Whoever has the bigger fist can provide security and protection for the people. Although the streamer is strong, she can't protect the people of Tsangzhou. She can't give the people absolute security, but the Nye family can, so the streamer shouldn't stop the people from pursuing happiness? Guangxia Moshi, the streamer raised the flag of national righteousness, and the integrity of the territory cannot be invaded. Brother Wei retorted from the perspective of the people. The people are innocent. If the streamer forced them, it would be heartless, and she would slap herself in the mouth. The streamer has met her opponent with her mouth. The audience watched with relish, but Jiang Pengji's fangirls were unwilling. Industrial design, what are you saying? Our streamer's influence is also very strong, okay? Yusue Jueo, you can't say that. The Nia family's influence in Zhongzhou is also strong. The point is that the streamer just attacked the north borderline, and before she could catch her breath, she brought troops to attack the Meng family. After a long war, the more she fights, the more her vitality will be damaged. Since the beginning of the war, the streamer has been fighting for a year and 4 months, and her vitality has been seriously damaged. The current situation is very complicated. Apart from the pressure from outside the borders, there is also Huang Song, the fake brother, who is watching covetously within the borders. In this aspect, the streamer is really not as good as the Nia family at protecting the people. Chapter 1090. The banquet ended on a sour note. Everyone knew that it was just a probing confrontation. No one had revealed their bottom line. The Nia family didn't want to take over the whole of Tsangzhou. They asked for Tsangzhou right from the start to make it easier to bargain later. It was the same logic as asking for a sky-high price and asking for a bargain on the ground. It was a negotiation. It was impossible to set a fixed price right from the start. They didn't know that Jiang Pengji's thought process was different from normal people. She wasn't probing. Her bottom line was to not lose an inch of land. The Nia family wanted to take over Tsangzhou so that they could get their hands on the land of Dongqing in the future. If the Nia family succeeded, Zhangjiang Pass, a natural barrier, would be destroyed. The Nia family could attack and defend. With such a neighbor, who could sleep at night? Jiang Pengji was the greediest. She planned to take over the whole of Tsangzhou. Huang Song was more optimistic. He and Jiang Pengji would split the cake. The Nia family would get out of the way. The Nia family's bottom line was the lowest. The Nia family, Jiang Pengji, and Huang Song shared Tsangzhou. Looking at the situation, it seemed that Jiang Pengji's ambition was the greatest. In fact, it was not. The Nia family's ambition was the most obscure and strong. The Nia family is so unforgiving. If the Yi family of Beiyuan gets involved, won't they turn the world upside down? Huang Song drank the hangover soup and forced himself to calm down. The plan now is to continue watching and helping each other with Lanting. Only then can we stabilize the situation and prevent the Nia family from acting rashly. Although he and Jiang Pengji were plastic siblings, they were barely family. The Nia family was an outsider. Rather than letting outsiders take advantage of them, it was best for family to share the cake. This situation was also Meng Zhan's arrangement before he died. He didn't want outside forces to intervene. The alliance between Huang Song and Jiang Pengji couldn't be broken. Little did they know that Jiang Pengji had her own plans. Zixiao, after the banquet, Wei Ci and the others followed behind Jiang Pengji and prepared to return home. They heard a familiar voice before they got far. Wei Ci smiled and stepped forward. He bowed to Jiang Pengji and the others, as if the verbal battle was fake. Big brother. Wei Ci returned the greeting. His expression was equally calm, as if they were an ordinary pair of brothers. Jiang Pengji secretly glanced at the two of them and said plainly, "You brothers haven't seen each other for many years. I'm afraid you have a lot to talk about. I won't disturb your reunion. Just one thing, Zixiao's body is weak. I'm afraid that you can't stay up late and tire yourself out. It's almost time, remember to rest early." Having said that, Jiang Pengji gave the space to the brothers and brought the others back to the house. Wei Dan looked at Jiang Pengji's back and narrowed his eyes meaningfully. There was some scrutiny in his eyes. He was well aware of his younger brother's ambition. Wei Ci had chosen Jiang Pengji to become an official because he had pinned his ambitions on her. The divine prefecture was unified, and the rivers were clear and the seas were peaceful. Could this person fulfill Zixiao's expectations? Long time no see. Zixiao, do you want to meet up with me? Today we'll only talk about private matters, not official ones. Wei Ci smiled and said, How would I dare to reject eldest brother's invitation? Please. The two of them walked side by side. Wei Si and Wei Dan chatted as they walked. They talked about their experiences over the years when they were separated and about their family members. Before the Wei family of Langya migrated, Wei Dan was already married. His sister-in-law gave birth to a son and a daughter. Now, there were 2 more sons and a daughter. Speaking of this, Wei Dan could not help but be concerned about his younger brother's marriage. Wei Si was 27 this year, not 17. If he did not have a wife, he could use his birth date as an excuse, but he did not even have a concubine to warm his bed. Wei Dan could not help but suspect that there was something wrong with his body. However, Wei Si had his own views since he was young. He liked to be a bachelor, so Wei Dan could not force him to be a matchmaker. Everything is fine at home, but I haven't heard from you for many years. Father misses you very much. If you're free, write him a letter. Wei Si's birth date was unlucky. When he was born, his mother died of a hemorrhage due to childbirth. Therefore, Father Wei was very disgusted with his youngest son. For many years, he did not care about him. The relationship between father and son was very thin. He did not know if it was because he was old, but Wei Dan could occasionally see his father looking at Wei Si's childhood portrait in the study. His words were filled with regret. Wei Si nodded. Yes. Your eldest nephew is set to marry the eldest daughter of the Guangshan family. When the girl reaches marriageable age, they will get married. As his youngest uncle, don't let them wait too long. Wei Dan could not help but complain. No matter how good it was to be a bachelor, one could not be a bachelor for life. If you really can't do it, why don't you choose a nephew to adopt? Wei Dan had 3 sons and 2 daughters. The youngest was still learning how to speak. Rather than letting Wei Si choose a child from a side branch of the clan, which would alienate him by blood, it was better to choose one of his nephews and raise him as his own. Wei Si was speechless. What did he mean by, he really can't do it? What did he mean by, can't do it? To Wei Si, Wei Dan was both a brother and a father. In his previous life, he had introduced many blind dates to him. In the end, he had no choice but to adopt his youngest son so that Wei Si would not have anyone to rely on. Wei Si was also tempted at that time, but his sister-in-law refused, so he gave up. I appreciate eldest brother's good intentions, but I'm afraid that sister-in-law will not agree to this. It's not good to separate sister-in-law from her nephew, right? Once adopted, the child could only call his biological mother eldest aunt. Which mother would be willing? Wei Dan was startled and could only dispel the idea resentfully. Wei Si calmly changed the topic and did not talk about adoption. Eldest brother is now assisting Nielyang? Wei Dan smiled faintly. Yes, Guangshan is not bad. If they did not have a good relationship, Wei Dan and Nielyang would not have become in-laws. Wei Si closed his eyes and did not reply. In his previous life, Wei Si knew Nielyang and met him a few times through Wei Dan. The Nia family was able to suppress the other feudal lords of Zhongzhou because of this person. But, Nielyang's final outcome was not good. In his previous life, the Nia family was able to expand rapidly. Most of the credit was due to the Nia family's genius, Nielyang. Later on, it was due to Sun Wen that they dominated. Although the Nia family was full of talents, the family was not as united as an iron bucket. Struggles between the heirs were common. As the Nia family's influence in Zhongzhou grew, the struggles between the heirs became more and more intense. Nielyang died before he was 35. He died in the family's infighting, and all his children were implicated. Looking at the time, Nielyang should be close. In this life, if the Nia family killed Nielyang, would there be a late bloomer, Sun Wen, to turn the tide? Countless thoughts flashed through Wei Si's mind, but there was no change in his expression. Even though he knew that Nielyang's death would make his eldest brother Wei Dan depressed for life, Wei Si had no intention of reminding him. After talking for a while, Wei Ci saw that the sky outside the tent was getting dark and offered to take his leave. Wei Dan did not urge him to stay. Instead, he got up to send him off. After sending Wei Ci off, Wei Dan turned to return to the house. Hearing about him is not as good as meeting him in person. Your younger brother is a dragon among men. Niel Yang said with pity. Why did he stay in Langyabak then? Wei Dan said, I don't know. He did not say the reason. Chapter 1091. Maybe it's because I've been too tired recently and I'm not acclimatized to the climate. I'll get better naturally after this period. Niel Yang rubbed the tip of his sore and cold nose and resisted the urge to sneeze. His eyes were bloodshot. Wei Yong asked hesitantly, Did you really drink the medicine prescribed by the doctor? Niel Yang's hand paused. Thinking of the black medicine, he could not help but feel bitterness in his mouth and stomach acid. Although he quickly restrained his emotions, it did not escape Wei Yong's observation. Thinking of his best friend's temper, Wei Yong's lowered eyebrows could not help but twitch twice. Niel Yang was an adult in his 30s, not just 3 years old. Not only was he afraid of bitterness, he even did the stupid thing of secretly pouring away the medicine. I'll go down now and ask someone to make another bowl. Guangshan, drink it before you rest. Wei Yong was more or less like a mother, especially Wei Yong, who was afraid of bitterness and poured away the medicine, causing his illness to be prolonged. No matter how minor an illness was, once it was dragged on for a long time, it would still become a serious illness. Niel Yang smiled helplessly. I'd better not drink this medicine. There's no effect after drinking it for so long. I'm suffering for nothing. Wei Yong stopped in his tracks and said with a serious expression, If that's the case, I'll ask the doctor to come over and take a look at you again. If it doesn't work, we'll change the prescription. Either drink the medicine or ask the doctor to come over and prescribe a more indescribable prescription. Niel Yang decisively chose the former. At the same time, Wei Ci stepped on the moonlight and returned to his residence. It was dark in the room. He took out a match from his sleeve and lit the oil lamp in the dark. With the help of the orange candlelight, Wei Ci vaguely saw a strange black shadow protruding from the bed, as if there was a person lying on it. Who's there? The candlelight crackled. Wei Ci shouted at the bed. The black shadow with its back facing him finally turned around. Oh. Zixiao is only back now? Jiang Pengji hugged something in her arms and muttered as she got up. If you didn't come back, this thing of yours would have been caught and cooked. Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. If it wasn't for the servants who brought it back, it might have been gone. Wei Ci knew who it was the moment he heard the voice. He felt relieved and continued to light other candles. The dark room gradually became brighter. Because Jiang Pengji got up, the black and white meatball, which had finally fallen asleep, groaned in dissatisfaction and opened its big watery eyes. Smelling a familiar scent, it stretched out its 2 meaty claws in Wei Ci's direction, as if asking for a hug and a kiss. TSK, this thing has become a spirit? You even dare to rob my people. Jiang Pengji mercilessly poked the black and white meatball's forehead, causing it to roll on the ground. My lord, are you still jealous of animals? Wei Ci was amused. He raised his hand and scooped up the little fellow. Although he was the one who raised it, it was usually taken care of by the servants or logisticians. The food it ate every day was even more sumptuous than the lord. He was a treasure in the army. It's fun to eat it once in a while. How is your family in Zhongzhou doing? Jiang Pengji yawned. Her cheeks were flushed due to her deep sleep, which made her look more feminine and naive. Wei Ci's heart warmed. He smiled faintly and said, Thank you for your concern, my lord. I heard that eldest brother is working for the Nye family. They must be doing well. Niel Yang was a direct descendant of the Nye family. Now, the Nye family valued him greatly. As his right-hand man, Wei Xi's status was naturally not low. Relying on this relationship, the relatives who sought refuge with the Wei family in Bianzhou would not be living too badly. My lord has waited here for so long. Is it just to ask this? Because of his previous life's mistakes, Wei Xi did not want to be too deeply involved with the Wei family. He only wanted to maintain a superficial friendship. In front of Jiang Pengji, he did not want to mention the Wei family. Jiang Pengji shook her head. Of course it's not just one thing. I have another surprise. I have no one to share it with, so after thinking about it, I still came to find Zixiao. Wei Xi pondered in his heart and carefully recalled what had happened recently. After thinking about it, there was only one thing that could make his lord so happy. Is there news from Jing Rong's side? Jiang Pengji smiled and nodded. Zixiao's thoughts are exquisite. Nothing can escape your control. Jing Rong led his troops to Qinzhou. He also treacherously plotted against Su Bei's forces to confuse Bogeo's spies in Qinzhou. Now that he has succeeded, shouldn't he be eager to claim credit? These days, she had endured and pretended that nothing had happened. Wasn't it all for this good news? Fortunately, Yang Si did not let her down. He successfully completed this plan of crossing the sea by deceiving everyone and crossing the sea in secret. Otherwise, Yang Si could not blame her. Yang Si, who was thinking of a way to cross the river Song, sneezed. His cold snot dripped down. He hurriedly took out a handkerchief to cover his nose. It's the middle of the night. Who's talking? Yang Si pinched his nose and suddenly felt the air freshen up. The tanned and burly Dian Yen carefully brought in a bowl of pitch-black medicinal concoction. Military counselor, I'm coming in. Yang Si hid the handkerchief and sniffed, suppressing the moisture that surged from the corners of his eyes. There was no need to mention how terrible it was to catch a cold at this time. His body was uncomfortable and his mood was not bright. Dian Yen stepped into the tent. His burly body made the tent feel cramped and cramped. He carefully brought the medicinal concoction to Yang Si's table. Military counselor, I've also found some candied plums for you. Each one has a thick coating of honey. They're absolutely sweet. Yang Si carefully took a sip. The unpleasant medicinal concoction spread in his mouth. His entire face scrunched up. Candied plums, Yang Si randomly grabbed a handful and threw 2 into his mouth. It took him a while to suppress the bitterness. His tightly furrowed brows gradually relaxed. Is there any news from the secret agents? After drinking half a bowl of medicine, his dizzy head felt better. Yang Si's violent temper also became much milder. Dian Yen said, the secret agents from the front lines have sent news that the Nye family's emissaries have entered the pass. I'm afraid they're up to no good. Yang Si chewed on the candied plums and said vaguely, our lord has an unyielding temperament. No matter how bad the Nye family's intentions are, it'll be difficult to get anything out of her hands. Has the manpower been accounted for? We'll cross the Song River tomorrow. We must arrive at Meng County in Sangzhou before the Nye family makes trouble. Dian Yen hesitated and asked, military counselor, if we only bring 2,000 elites into Sangzhou, once Huang Song makes trouble for us, our lord dares to bring 5,000 elites into Sangzhou, but we're not like our lord. Bringing 2,000 is already more than enough. If we didn't have to pressure the Nye family's emissaries, we wouldn't have brought these 2,000 people. Yang Si smiled. Even if Huang Song had 3 times the courage, he wouldn't dare to kill his acquaintances at this time. The relationship between Huang Song and the lord was no different from being interdependent. The two could only form an alliance. If Huang Song dared to play tricks to assassinate the lord, the Nye family would definitely take the opportunity to kill him. At that time, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Huang Song's own life would be in danger. What was he after? Moreover, if we transfer too many troops, Yang Si's eyes were cold. He pointed in the direction of Zhe County. I'm afraid that someone will take advantage of the situation. Qinzhou was empty of troops. If there weren't enough troops to hold the fort, who knew whether the evil Han Yu would take the opportunity to stab them? Dian Yen was frightened. This can't be, right? In order to help the Lord stabilize the rear, Yang Si and Dian Yen formed an alliance with Su Bei from Zhe County as representatives. The two forces had frequent contact. Because of the loser's yearning for the top student, Dian Yen respected Han Yu. Yang Si sneered. Why not? The alliance is not a long-term plan. It's just a paper agreement that can be torn apart at any time. Chapter 1092. Dian Yen was speechless. He had been ordered around by Yang Si for many years. He had long understood a fact: although these strategists had learned the essence of 100 schools of thought, they used words like, sincerity is the beginning and end of an object. If not, there is nothing. Therefore, a gentleman's sincerity is precious. These words taught others to be honest and trustworthy. When it came to themselves, each of them was better than the other. They changed their attitude faster than flipping a book. What was sincerity? Who and what was the covenant? When it was useful, it was as solid as a rock. Once it was no longer useful, it was too crude to be used to wipe one's ass. Dian Yen thought of Yang Si and Han Yu. These two regarded each other as bosom friends. Why did they stab each other in the back? Indeed, as a martial artist, he could not understand the friendship between scholars. If that's the case, won't the Lord be in danger? Dian Yen was anxious. His face revealed genuine concern. His lord and Huang Song appeared harmonious on the surface but were actually at odds. If Su Bei took the opportunity to cause trouble, wouldn't the Lord be faced with enemies on both sides? Yang Si frowned as he drank the rest of the medicine. Only the sweet candied fruit could soothe his injured taste buds. The Lord is in danger? It was as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Yang Si had known Jiang Pengji for so many years. He had only seen her make others suffer. He had never seen anyone make her suffer. Meng Zhan was the first person to suffer, but his ending was obvious to all. Yang Si did not think that his lord would fall here. Deputy Commander Dian, you are wrong. Our lord will not suffer any losses. Regarding this, Yang Si was full of confidence. Before Meng Zhan died, he had laid out a dead end. It was obvious that he wanted to support Huang Song and Jiang Pengji to fight. He wanted to use this opportunity to exhaust her strength and make her suffer. Unexpectedly, Jiang Pengji reacted immediately. She dispatched Yang Si to lead troops into Qinzhou. This was a dangerous move. If Yang Si was incompetent or harbored other intentions, not only would she lose Qinzhou and Sangzhou, she might even lose Hu County. This was a complete and utter gamble. If she won the gamble, she would break out of this predicament. If she lost the gamble, her life would be in danger. Faced with such a huge risk, she had high hopes for Yang Si. She did not have any unnecessary suspicions or doubts. Even Yang Si could not help but be speechless with such trust and importance. My lord treats me as a scholar of the state, I shall repay him as a scholar of the state. Even though it was difficult, Yang Si still lived up to his mission in the end. He seized every second to control the entire territory of Qinzhou and lived up to his trust. However, no matter how skilled Yang Si was, he could not completely stop the spread of the news. At most, he could delay it for a while. Although the time was short, it was enough. Late at night on the third day, Huang Song was in the middle of a discussion with several of his trusted strategists. There was a faint noise and clamor coming from outside, but it didn't take long before it subsided. He frowned and asked, "What happened outside?" The contents of his discussion with his confidant were all confidential. If it was accidentally overheard by others, who knew how much damage it would cause? Not long after, a ragged beggar with unkempt hair was brought in. This person's appearance was extremely unkempt. His face was stained with filth and dried black blood. Only his eyes were still somewhat spirited. Reporting to my lord, I found a secret letter on this person. The deputy general who was guarding Huang Song stepped forward and said, holding a small bamboo slip that was less than the width of a palm with both hands. He claimed to be the deputy envoy of Qinzhou General Yuanan. I saw him acting suspiciously, so I sent people to arrest him. After arresting the suspicious person, this guy still shouted that he was the deputy envoy of Yuanan and said that he had something important to tell Huang Song in person. Yuanan? This person is under Commandant Yuanan? Huang Song's heart skipped a beat. He quickly grabbed the small bamboo slip and used his fingers to untie it. His palms were sweating because of nervousness and worry. He received a letter from Qinzhou at this time, and the messenger was a deputy envoy with a lame and disheveled appearance. This made him very uneasy. When Huang Song ordered someone to bring a lamp and use the candlelight to read the tiny words on the bamboo slip, the lame deputy envoy cried and begged for mercy. Greetings, my lord. The lame deputy envoy was originally quite strong, but in order to avoid Yang Xi's search, he had to disguise his identity. He ate the wind and drank dew every day, so he was extremely thin. His ragged clothes hung on his body. He cried and said, Commandant Yuanan ordered me to risk my life to deliver this secret letter, lest you fall into Lu Shi's trap. Lu Shi sent troops to attack Qinzhou and imprisoned Commandant Yuanan. Qing Jing and the others heard the commotion and quickly went forward to ask for details. Feng Ju's face was very ugly, as if it had been painted black. Who on earth led troops to attack Qinzhou? What is the current situation of the general who was originally stationed in Qinzhou? Quickly tell me the truth that you know. Don't leave anything out. At this moment, countless thoughts whizzed through Feng Ju's mind. Jiang Pengji's main force was still at the border of Qianyan County. She only brought 5,000 elites to be stationed outside Meng County. How could she have the strength to attack Qinzhou? Other than that, Qinzhou and Sangzhou were neighbors, separated only by the Song River. If Qinzhou was in trouble, why did the news only arrive now? Before the lame deputy envoy could speak, Huang Song, who had already finished reading the secret letter, spoke with a livid face. There's no need to ask. Huijie will understand after reading this. He handed the secret letter with more than 100 tiny words to Feng Ju. After Feng Ju read it, he passed it to Qing Jing and the others to read. Huang Song smiled bitterly and said, I can't believe we were counterattacked by Lanting. According to the forces on the surface, it was impossible for Jiang Pengji to take down Qinzhou without anyone knowing. Moreover, she planned it in the territory of Huang Song and the others. He did not expect that the other party had left a trump card in Hu County to avoid Huang Song and the others' attention. Feng Ju frowned so hard that he could almost squeeze a fly to death. I never expected this person to be Yang Jingrong. Following the victory of the battle at the northern borderline, the reputation of the talents under Jiang Pengji's command was known to the world. The most outstanding strategist was undoubtedly Sun Wen. His origins were unknown and he was previously unknown. After the battle at the northern borderline, all the forces knew of him. There was no suspense in the military. Fu Wang was fully deserving of the top spot. No one could refute him. In comparison, Yang Xi and Dian Yen were invisible. Yang Xi was of humble origin. He had once served Prince Changshu, but before he could achieve much, he had jumped ship. Dian Yen was a bandit. Although he had brute strength and extraordinary combat power, he was not well versed in literature. It was impossible for him to lead an army alone. These two had been banished to Hu County by Jiang Pengji for many years. Their already insignificant presence was even smaller now. Apart from Su Bei's forces who had some understanding of these two, outsiders completely ignored them. They never expected that they would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Yang Jingrong? It's him, Yang Xi. Huang Song found the relevant memories in his mind. His expression became increasingly ugly. The relationship between Yang Si and Huang Song could only be described as an ill-fated relationship. Back then, when the royal family of Dongqing had just moved the capital to Qinzhou, Yang Si was still serving under Prince Changsho. With Feng Zhu's assistance, Huang Song made many military achievements. He led his troops and caused many problems for Prince Changsho. Chapter 1093. Not long after Yang Si assisted Prince Changsho, he jumped ship and kicked out his old boss. Yang Si, who had nowhere to go, went to Huang Song. Who knew that the gatekeeper of Huang Song's mansion would look down on him and deliberately suppressed Yang Si's visiting card, making Yang Si wait in vain for a few days. Yang Si was proud and arrogant. He simply took his boy servant to Wanzhou and went away CI. He fell into a trap. It could be said that if the gatekeeper had not stopped him, Yang Si would have stayed in Huang Song's tent. But what happened? After a few years, Yang Si reenacted the scene from back then. He once again ruined Huang Song's plan and caused him to suffer. Fate was too wonderful for words. Memories of the past flashed through Huang Song's mind. The nerves at the corner of his mouth twitched uncontrollably. He owed Yang Si 1.8 million strings of coins in his previous life, didn't he? Why did he only take advantage of him? Qing Jing read the letter. His sword-like eyebrows furrowed as if they were about to form a knot. Nie Sun, who was beside him, had the same expression. Qinzhou had been taken away by Jiang Pengji. It would be difficult to get it back. He never expected her to be so bold. A trusted strategist in the tent said, "What does Lu Shi mean by this? Attacking Qinzhou without any regard for the alliance between the two families?" The envoy from the Nie family of Zhongzhou is still in Sangzhou and is eyeing Sangzhou covetously. At this juncture, if the Huang and Lu families fight, it will benefit the enemy for no reason. Jiang Pengji seemed to be a bit rebellious, but her performance was considered good. She did not seem like a reckless person who disregarded the overall situation for her own benefit. At this moment, she suddenly attacked Qinzhou. Who would believe that she did not do it on purpose? Even a ghost would not believe such nonsense. Qing Jing sneered. What other intentions could she have? She was dissatisfied with the previous loss and wanted to find a way to get back at us. Under normal circumstances, Jiang Pengji would have half of Sangzhou and Qinzhou. But because of Meng Zhan's scheme, the entire Qinzhou and Sangzhou counties were in Huang Song's pocket. The whole process was effortless. It would be strange if Jiang Pengji could bear it. The strategist also thought of this. His face became gloomy and his tone was a bit cold. Even so, all this was planned by Meng Zhan. My lord just went with the flow. She did not care about her friendship with my lord and attacked you from behind. It was despicable. Qing Jing's lips curled into a mocking smile. Morality and benevolence couldn't restrain the calculation of interests. If they really wanted to be calculative, Huang Song was the one who broke the contract first. Meng Zhan set up this trap, and Huang Song did push the boat with the current, but it also hurt the interests of his allies. Jiang Pengji had been bullied. Naturally, she had to find a way to regain her dignity. Lu Prefecture Magistrate, are you ignoring the overall situation? Someone said softly. The Nie clan's diplomatic mission is still here. Nie Sun said softly, this time, it's not that Lu Prefecture's magistrate doesn't care about the big picture, it's Lord who doesn't care about the big picture. Jiang Pengji considered the big picture, so she didn't fall out with Huang Song immediately. She didn't even question him. Now that the ball had been kicked to Huang Song, he was about to face a difficult problem. Was he going to put up with this for the sake of the big picture? Or should he go to interrogate them and take back Qinzhou? The world was in chaos, and the territory belonged to whoever conquered it. If Huang Song went to ask for it, he would most likely return empty-handed and become a laughing stock. This was secondary. If the two sides could not come to an agreement on this issue, the already fragile alliance would collapse in an instant. When the sandpiper and the clam fought, the fishermen benefited. If Huang Song and Jiang Pengji fought, it would only benefit the Nye clan in the end. For the sake of the big picture, Huang Song had to accept this loss. He sent someone to negotiate with Jiang Pengji and come up with a plan that satisfied both sides. No matter what the most important plan was, Huang Song couldn't avoid losing a lot of money. Everyone in the tent thought of this, and their expressions became much gloomier. For a moment, the surroundings were silent. Only the crackling sound of the burning candles could be heard. After a while, Huang Song sat back in his seat in a daze. He said in a dejected tone, "Leave this matter to Huaijie and Yumo." Qinzhou, which they had just obtained, was about to change hands. It would be a lie to say that they didn't feel heartache. Everyone looked at each other. They all wanted to stop it, but they couldn't think of a way to break the situation. Qing Jing and Feng Ju could only accept the order. Nye Sun said, according to the letter, after Yang Si brought his troops into Qinzhou, he didn't start a massacre. He only imprisoned Commandant Yuanan. In my opinion, Lu Prefecture's magistrate doesn't want to break the alliance with the Lord at this time. Most likely, there's still room for negotiation. Jiang Pengji indeed didn't kill all of Huang Song's soldiers. Except for those who were injured during the battle, the other captives were imprisoned and guarded. Huang Song frowned and asked Nye Sun, "What do you think, Qingyun?" Nye Sun deliberated and said, "In my opinion, Lu Prefecture magistrate may not want Qinzhou." Not Qinzhou? Why did he bring his troops to attack Qinzhou instead of Qinzhou? Why do you say that? Huang Song asked. Nye Sun cupped his hands and said hesitantly, "Qinzhou is located in the south, but Lu Prefecture magistrate's territory is in the north." Huang Song frowned and got up to take a great universal geographical map. He looked at it carefully. Jiang Pengji's territory was all concentrated in the north: Beijiang, Chongzhou, Wanzhou, Hu County, and Xianyan County in Sangzhou. If Qinzhou was taken, Qinzhou had little to do with Jiang Pengji's territory. It was also separated by Huang Song's Zhangzhou and Sangzhou. Seeing this, Huang Song suddenly understood something. Nye Sun said, "I'm afraid Lu Prefecture magistrate wants to exchange Qinzhou for Zhangzhou and Sangzhou." Nye Sun was not the only one who understood this. Qing Jing and Feng Ju also knew this. Because Jiang Pengji had a request, there was room for bargaining in the negotiations. "No, Zhangzhou and Sangzhou," Huang Song refused without thinking. The pained expression on his face deepened. The two fattest pieces of meat in Sangzhou were the two counties in Huang Song's hands. The horse resources were concentrated there. If Zhangzhou and Sangzhou were exchanged for Qinzhou, it meant that Jiang Pengji had the entire Zhangzhou in her hands. Beijiang and Sangzhou were war resources that the military would fight for. The horse farms were in these two places. Without war horses, their combat power would be lower. How could they fight for the world and fight for supremacy? Huang Song was distressed. How could the other strategists not be distressed? Zhangzhou and Sangzhou had finally gotten their hands on it, but now they were forced to give it up. Who wouldn't be upset? The strategists looked at each other. They voted with their eyes and chose Feng Ju as the representative to appease Huang Song. Feng Ju stepped forward and said, "My lord, it's better to make a decision as soon as possible." Huang Song was distraught. "My lord, you must know that what you lose, you gain. It's not impossible to exchange Zhangzhou and Sangzhou for Qinzhou." Huang Song calmed down. He had always been willing to listen to Feng Ju. "Huaijie, what do you mean?" "It's a pity to lose Zhangzhou and Sangzhou, but it may not be a blessing for Lu Prefecture magistrate to take Zhangzhou. Beiyuan is eyeing Yumen Pass covetously. Zhangjiang Pass is guarding against the ambitious Nye family of Zhongzhou. My lord is in Haozhou and Qinzhou. Su Bei is in Hu County and Hu County." Huang Song looked down at the great universal geographical map. His expression suddenly changed. According to Feng Ju, Jiang Pengji was surrounded by enemies. Chapter 1094. The people in Jiang Pengji's tent also thought about what Feng Zhu was worried about. Choose the lesser of two evils, and choose the greater of two benefits. Prefecture Magistrate Huang isn't an ordinary person. If we give up Sangzhou, he only needs to cultivate in peace for a few years and he'll be able to soar into the sky with a single leap. He'll develop into a thorn in the side of my lord. Feng Zhen smiled and squinted his eyes. His eyes shone brightly, as if he was calculating something. In comparison, Qinzhou is a rich and populous place, but because of the imperial family, its vitality has been greatly damaged. It won't be able to do much in the short term. In this chaotic world, developing well didn't mean that one would be able to walk to the end. If his fists weren't strong enough, even if he managed his territory well, he would only end up benefiting his opponents. After some deliberation, they insisted that Sangzhou was more valuable than Qinzhou. It would be best if they could get the two counties from Huangsong. Li Yun looked at the great universal geographical map and felt worried. If that's the case, won't we be surrounded by enemies on all sides? The Yi family of Beiyuan, the Nia family of Zhongzhou, and Huangsong and Su Bei of Dongqing. The first two were powerful, while the last two had a natural geographical advantage. If the four sides joined forces and attacked from all sides, the battle line would be stretched too far, and the lord would fall into a very passive and dangerous situation. Feng Zhen frowned slightly and said helplessly, "Hanmei, I had no choice but to make this choice. If the lord takes Qinzhou, it will be too difficult to defend. If we don't do anything, Prefecture Magistrate Huang will be able to occupy Haozhou, Qinzhou, and Sangzhou counties. When that happens, our lord will be in danger." Since all three paths were so steep, why not choose the most advantageous one? So what if he was besieged on all sides? They would always be able to find a way out of this predicament. If they didn't even have this little bit of confidence, how could they compete for supremacy? Li Yun thought about it carefully, his handsome face showing signs of worry. He wished he could topple the mountains and overturn the seas, cleansing the world for his lord. Meng Heng thought about it carefully. He seemed to have thought of something, and his furrowed brows gradually relaxed. Jiang Pengji noticed his expression and asked, "Shijiu, do you have any good ideas?" Meng Heng stepped forward. Heng thought of the school of vertical and horizontal. School of vertical and horizontal? Meng Heng nodded and said, "The school of vertical and horizontal is one of the 100 schools of thought. The first prime minister of the great Xia dynasty, Huangfu Xiu, absorbed the strengths of hundreds of schools of thought. He used the techniques of the school of vertical and horizontal to make friends with distant countries and attack their neighbors. Finally, he assisted Emperor Taizu of the Xia dynasty in unifying the 9 states. My lord exchanged Sangzhou and Sangzhou counties from Governor Huang. It seems like she will face the predicament of being surrounded by enemies on all sides, but if she uses a series of moves, she will definitely have a chance of survival." When the Xia was first established, there were hundreds of schools of thought that challenged and contended with each other. Different schools of thought competed with each other and the atmosphere of academic research was strong. This wave did not last for long. When Prime Minister Huangfu Xiu was executed, the imperial court ordered that Confucianism should be the only one to be respected and other academic schools should be suppressed. Even now, the 100 schools of thought had recovered, but the Confucian school was still the leader of the 100 schools of thought, occupying the majority of the market. The other schools of thought kept a low profile. Jiang Pengji was about to listen carefully when she caught a glimpse of the bullet screen in the streaming room. Yuji Shang Mia, the school of vertical and horizontal. But this world doesn't seem to have the 7 heroes of the Warring States period. Where did the vertical and horizontal come from? Just not bad, this world has the Analects of Confucius and Mencius. Why can't there be alliances? It was normal for them to have similar thoughts. Zilongbeo, befriend the distant and attack the nearby. Streamer, there's no Premier Zhou in this world, right? It's so funny to see her embarrassed. Lo Siji Lianmeng, the phrase, befriend the distant and attack the nearby, comes from the strategy of the Warring States, It's better for a king to befriend the distant and attack the nearby. If you have an inch, you'll be a king. If you have a ruler, you'll be a king. The core meaning is to contact distant countries and attack the nearby countries. I don't think it's embarrassing. Landiei, during the Warring States period, Qin could fight against 6 people alone. The streamer only has 4. What's there to be afraid of? Jiang Pengji's mood lightened up when she saw the bullet screen. It was just 1 against 4. She was not afraid. She signaled Mengheim with her eyes to continue. The latter hesitated for a moment and said, "The Yi family of Beiyuan is powerful, but they are not without worries. My lord, why don't you secretly express your goodwill to the royal family of Beiyuan or other aristocratic families? You can use this to restrain the Yi family so that they have no time to care about other things." Beiyuan was a strange country. The royal family was weak and the power of the country was in the hands of a few aristocratic families. The Yi family also had enemies. It was not impossible to send an envoy to instigate and lobby them. This method could also be used on the other clans. Because of this, everyone had a secret meeting for a long time. The frown on their faces finally eased up. Although it was a dangerous move, if it was executed well, they could be reborn in the end. Wei Ci looked at Jiang Pengji's side profile. His eyes were like rippling spring water, shining with an intoxicating gentleness. He was very glad that God had given him a second chance. He could make up for the regrets of his previous life and watch this person ascend to the throne with his own eyes. As he was thinking, his fingertips touched something hot and wet. He looked down and saw that it was the black and white ball of meat using its nose to support his hand. It looked at him with its innocent black eyes. The black and white ball of meat used its mouth to suck his finger, trying to suck something out. It did not move for a while. It was sad like a salted fish that had lost its dream. Wei Ci laughed to himself. In order not to disturb the others, he secretly covered it with his sleeves and carried it on his knees. He took out the dried meat that had been softened in advance from his sleeves. Fortunately, the meeting ended quickly. Wei Ci carried the ball of meat out as if nothing had happened. He looked around and found the soldier who was taking care of the ball of meat. The soldier did not dare to go near the main tent. He could only anxiously stay where he was and wipe his sweat. He had only taken a short nap. He did not expect that the beloved pet that the military counselor had asked him to take care of would disappear without a trace. Wei Ci comforted him with a smile. Take good care of it. Don't let it run around in the camp. Otherwise, it will be easily stolen by others for a sumptuous meal. The soldier nodded repeatedly. Just as he was about to carry the ball of meat away, he awkwardly realized that the ball of meat had used all 4 of its paws and was holding onto Wei Ci's sleeves tightly. It kept making sounds of grievance, as if it was complaining about a scumbag who had abandoned his wife and daughter. Wei Ci raised his hand and patted its head. He said gently, "Don't be angry." The soldier secretly peeked at Wei Ci. Seeing his gentle expression, he could not help but be secretly speechless. The teacher was indeed an immortal who had descended to the world. No matter what he did, he looked so good. Those who know the inside story know that you are raising a pet. Those who don't know would think that you are raising a child. Fengzhen followed him and found that Wei Ci's loving father attitude was pure and natural. He was even more skilled than an experienced driver. If Zixiao had a child, wouldn't he be pampered to the heavens by you? Fengzhen joked with a smile. Wei Ci's expression dimmed a little. He said coldly, "Excessive pampering is the same as overpraising him to death. Zixiao is quite understanding. He really does not look like someone who does not have a family." Wei Ci's eyes narrowed, as if asking, "Is this the reason for you to trick Feng Yi?" Fengzhen stiffly changed the topic. "Cough, let's not talk about this. Does Zixiao also agree with my lord's use of the art of interconnection?" "I agree, but the candidates have not been decided." Wei Ci said, "Huang Song and Su Bei are easy to deal with. We know their backgrounds. However, the Yi family of Beiyuan and the Nia family of Zhongzhou are not so easy to deal with. Chapter 1095. It'd be great if there was a second or third son Zidao. He'd definitely be good at this. Wei Ci glanced at Fengzhen and said, "It's better to rely on yourself than on others." Fengzhen shook his head like a rattle drum. How could he do this kind of work with his small body? Zixiao is really vicious. Beiyuan has always been known as the northern country of ice and snow. Out of the 4 seasons, it's only warm for a few months. The rest of the time, it's snowing and freezing the city. If you really went there, you'd probably be frozen before you could even convince anyone. Fengzhen's eyes flashed and he teased, "In my opinion, Zixiao is a great candidate with a silver tongue. I heard that the people of Beiyuan, regardless of gender, are all tall and strong. Zixiao, with your beauty, I wonder how popular you'd be." The first few sentences were decent, but the last few sentences went off the rails. Wei Ci strode forward, too lazy to waste his breath on Fengzhen. Cough cough cough. "Zixiao, don't walk so fast." Fengzhen saw Wei Ci's frosty expression and sighed. Honest people really couldn't take teasing. After jogging for 2 steps, Wei Ci stopped in front of him. "Zixiao still cares for people." "I know." Fengzhen didn't finish his sentence when the smile on his face disappeared. His gaze fell on a man not far away. He looked similar to Wei Ci and had a more honest and gentle temperament. Wasn't this Wei Dan from the Nia family envoy, Wei Ci's eldest brother? What was he doing here? Eldest brother. Wei Ci stepped forward to greet him. Before he could get up, Wei Dan's cold right hand grabbed his wrist. Soon, a few red finger marks were left on his skin. It was clear how much force he had used in his anxiety. "Eldest brother, what happened? Why did the usually calm eldest brother lose his composure like this?" Fengzhen was also observing Wei Dan. Only then did he realize that his eyes were slightly green and his expression was tired and dispirited. "Zixiao, do me a favor." Wei Dan's tone was nervous. Wei Ci lowered his face to hide the emotions in his eyes. He said, "Don't rush, eldest brother. Let's talk as we walk." Wei Dan didn't invite Fengzhen, but he didn't refuse either. The latter shamelessly followed the two. Wei Dan's steps were swift and his strides were wide. His clothes brushed against each other and made a clear rustling sound. If it was in the past, Wei Yong wouldn't have been so rude, but he couldn't care less now. "Zixiao, you've learned the art of Qi Huang. Can you diagnose a common cold and fever?" Wei Cheng knew that Wei Ci had medical skills. As the saying goes, a prolonged illness makes one a doctor. Wei Ci's medical skills had been trained this way. Wei Ci nodded. "Although my medical skills are not as exquisite as those of famous doctors, it is not a problem for me to treat minor illnesses and fevers." Fengzhen asked, "If someone is sick, why don't they find a doctor?" "I don't trust you." When Wei Ling said these 3 words, his expression darkened several degrees, and a heavy and oppressive aura lingered around his body. Fengzhen's eyes widened in shock. "You can't trust the doctor you brought, but you trust your own brother from the opposing camp?" How much trust did Big Brother have in Wei Ci's integrity? Wasn't he afraid that Wei Ci would tamper with the prescription and complete the ultimate killer move with just one set of medicine? Just as Fengzhen was curious about the patient's identity, Wei Ci quickly guessed the patient's identity. In the entire world, apart from family members, only Niel Yang could make eldest brother so nervous and lose his composure. It was rare to find a confidant in life. In his previous life, Niel Yang had died early, and eldest brother had been depressed for more than 10 years before he finally passed away from illness. Following Wei Ling's footsteps, Wei Ci and Fengzhen entered the Nia family's quarters. Before the two entered the courtyard, they smelled the scent of medicine in the air. Wei Ci secretly twitched his nose, his brows furrowing. "Guangshan, Zixiao is here. Feng Zhen looked at the sneaky formation and furrowed his brows in displeasure. At the same time, he was secretly glad that he had followed. If he had not followed and Wei Ci had been brought here by Wei Ling alone, and someone with ulterior motives had spread the news to Jiang Pengji, the Lord might have become suspicious. Entering the room, the scent of medicine in the air was even stronger, mixed with an indescribable sour smell. Just as Wei Ling finished speaking, the two of them heard a heart-wrenching cough. Wei Ci was startled. It had only been a few days since they had last seen each other. Why had Niao Yang become so ill? Niao Yang lay on the bed, his cheeks pale and his lips chapped. Faint bruises could be seen at the corners of his lips. I haven't seen you for a few days. Why have you become like this? Niao Yang struggled to sit up. He looked very weak, as if his vitality had been sucked away by something. He smiled bitterly and said, "Why did Zixuan invite your younger brother here? The doctor has already taken a look at me. It's not a serious illness." With that, he said to Wei Ci and Feng Zhen, "Forgive Liang for being too ill to entertain the two of you. Please help yourself." Wei Ling said, "Zixiao's skills are not bad. No matter what, let him take a look. If he is really fine, Liang will be at ease." Niao Yang could not dissuade his best friend, so he could only smile apologetically at Wei Ci. "Thank you, Zixiao, for making this trip." Wei Ci nodded and lifted the bedding. He let Niao Yang stretch out a hand and carefully feel his pulse. Niao Yang was seriously ill. His pulse was much weaker than an ordinary person's. It was sometimes strong and sometimes weak. This pulse. Wei Ci paused and turned to ask Wei Ling, "What did the other doctors say?" "They only said it was a common cold. They prescribed a few prescriptions, but Guangshan's cold did not improve." Wei Ling frowned. He even revealed the matter of Niao Yang secretly pouring out the medicine. Niao Yang, who was lying on the bed, secretly turned his face away. He felt embarrassed. The day before yesterday, the doctor prescribed a new medicine for Guangshan. I watched him drink it, but not long after, Guangshan's condition worsened rapidly. I checked that prescription and the dregs of the decoction. They were all for a cold. The doctors took turns to diagnose and treat him, but their statements were too uniform. I became suspicious and was afraid of alerting the enemy. I had no choice but to get Zixiao to take his pulse and see what was going on. Wei Ci said, "In that case, Mr. Nia also noticed it." "What do you mean?" "He was poisoned. Although the poison is weak, taking something poisonous for a long time will definitely cause the poison to accumulate in his body, making him weak and frail." Wei Ci said, "The prescription prescribed by the doctor for a cold is definitely useless. Drinking it will do more harm than good." Niao Yang did not have a cold at all. He was poisoned by someone. Niao Yang's eyes flashed with astonishment. Wei Ling even tightened his grip on his sleeves. "Poisoned? I still have to look at the prescriptions prescribed by the other doctors. I'm not sure what went wrong." After Wei Ci finished, he added, "Big brother, you should pay attention to the doctors who came with you. Such a simple pulse, any qualified doctor can take it. They all said that Mr. Nia had a cold. This doesn't make sense." Wei Ling endured it. It took a lot of effort to suppress his anger. He got up and took the prescription prescribed by the doctor. "I didn't expect that Zixuan would find you." Taking advantage of Wei Ling's departure, Niao Yang laughed softly. A smile appeared on his sickly face. "Mr. is of noble character and unquestionable integrity. Liang admires you very much." If Wei Ci wanted him to die, he only needed to hide his illness and pulse. Wei Ling could not say anything. Chapter 1096. Niao Yang seemed to want to laugh, but because his movements were too big, he accidentally choked. The smile that had just risen froze at the corner of his lips. "You're really straightforward." Niao Yang took a breath and looked at Wei Ci with a faint smile. I thought that Zixiao and your brother's temperament is similar, but now that I see it, I've misjudged you. Aren't you afraid of hurting yourself by saying this to me? Wei Ci opened his thin lips. Mr. Nya, please open your mouth. Your tongue is thick and has a different color. Are there any differences when you eat or drink tea? Niao Yang looked straight at Wei Ci's face. Whatever the other person instructed, he would do as he was told, acting like a well-behaved patient who was highly cooperative with the doctor. Differences? Yes. Occasionally you can't taste it or the tip of your tongue is slow. Something that is obviously bitter, but it doesn't taste as bitter as I remember. The process of looking, listening, questioning, and feeling the pulse, every move was smooth and pleasing to the eye. If he did not know Wei Ci's identity, Niao Yang would have suspected that Wei Ci was a reclusive and virtuous doctor. You discovered it in time. If you carefully dispel the poison, except for a weak body, your life will not be in danger. Remember not to overwork or waste too much energy. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll die young. Wei Ci said, I can see that Big Brother regards Mr. Nya as a confidant. According to Big Brother's temperament, if something happens to Mr. Nya under his watch, he'll probably be depressed for the rest of his life. Niao Yang wanted to laugh bitterly. Living in troubled times, every day alive was a day earned. How many years was there between dying young and dying of old age? Niao Yang's identity meant that he could not stay out of the struggle. He discovered it in time this time, but could he escape a second time? However, he never expected Wei Ci to mention Wei Dan. A trace of astonishment flashed in Niao Yang's eyes, as if he did not expect that the reason Wei Ci was willing to help was for Wei Dan. There are many heroes in the world, and it can be said that there are many bright stars, but there is only one Niao Yang in the world. Wei Ci smiled lightly, his overly delicate and colorful face instantly became lively, like 100 flowers blooming. Of course, Mr. Nya only has one life. Niao Yang was about to speak, but his sharp ears heard Wei Dan's footsteps and he quickly stopped. Zixiao, the prescriptions are all here. Wei Dan took out several prescriptions. Some were in the form of bamboo slips, while others were folded bamboo paper. They were all well preserved. Wei Ci took it and looked at it closely. His brows were sometimes furrowed and sometimes relaxed, making Wei Ci's heart beat wildly. There's no problem with these prescriptions. Whether it's the herbs or the measurements, they're all good for treating colds. After Wei Ci looked at them, he arranged them neatly and returned them to their original positions. However, you must prescribe the right medicine to treat the illness. Although Mr. Nya has signs of a cold, these symptoms are caused by poison and not a cold. Drinking these medicines will not only not treat the symptoms but will also worsen the poison entering the body. After Wei Yong heard this, he was so angry that his whole body trembled. If not for the fact that the situation was not right, he would have drawn the sword at his waist and killed all of the accompanying physicians. Eldest brother, you said that all the doctors spoke the same words. I'm afraid there's something fishy behind this. Wei Ci did not say much, but his meaning was clear. It was not an accident that Niao Yang was poisoned and killed. The actions of the few physicians were also instigated by the mastermind. Rather than venting his anger on a few physicians and making the mastermind vigilant, it was better to beat them at their own game. Niao Yang lowered his head slightly, a few rays of light flashed past his eyes. He smiled weakly and said softly, family scandals should not be spread in public. I've embarrassed myself in front of Zixiao. Wei Ci wrote a new prescription for Niao Yang. Mr. Nya's body has accumulated a lot of poison, but getting rid of it is not a day's work. Mr.'s body is not suitable for heavy medicine now, so we can only take it slowly. My medical skills are limited. Mr. Nya, you can find a trusted medical officer later. His slender fingers pinched the pen and dropped the pen. His handwriting was clean and beautiful, pleasing to the eye. Niao Yang said, no need. Zixiao's medical skills are good and trustworthy. Wei Ci did not reply and handed the prescription to Wei Yong. Does Mr. Nya have any other instructions? Niao Yang knew that Wei Ci was planning to leave. There is indeed one thing. Niao Yang's eyes wandered and said awkwardly, "There's licorice in the prescription. Can the amount be heavier?" Afraid of bitterness? Wei Ci asked with his eyes. Niao Yang hesitated for a second between bitterness and disgrace before decisively choosing the latter. Feng Zhen, who had been in the background, was speechless. He seemed to have found out a secret. Niao Yang was seriously ill and could not get up to send him off. He could only let Wei Yong take his place to be polite. After a distance, Feng Zhen's gossipy nature could not help itself. Why did Zixiao save him? Although he did not understand Niao Yang's position in the Nie family, he felt that this person was not easy to deal with. Leaving him alive would be a disaster. The master of the Nie family is Niao Yang's grandfather. This old man was an influential figure when he was young. Now that he is old, he is still full of energy and does not lose to the younger generation. He controls the Nie family's authority. Wei Ci said coldly, although he is not muddle-headed, he has not chosen a suitable successor. As time drags on, his children will gradually grow up and the people's hearts will waver. They will start to think about things they should not. Feng Zhen immediately thought of the Su family from Zhe County. The two brothers, Su Bei and Su Fei, fought so fiercely. Wasn't it because the grandfather favored the youngest grandson and caused a fight between the eldest grandson and the second grandson? The Nie family's situation was more complicated than the Su family. The two sons of the old master of the Su family were both dead, leaving only two grandsons. The Nie family was different. Each branch feels that they have hope. How can they live in peace? Wei Ci's eyes flashed with a trace of memory. In his previous life, when he lived in seclusion in Zhongzhao's Bianzhou, he had also been solicited by the second branch of the Nie family. They tried to pit him against the fifth branch that his elder brother worked for. Niao Yang is the most outstanding of the grandchildren. He also holds the title of the eldest son of the fifth branch. If he gains the favor of the old master, the status of the fifth branch will rise along with him. Thus, some people could not resist. After hearing this, Feng Zhen finally understood the whole story. In that case, if Niao Yang is alive, he can muddy the waters of the Nie family even more? Wei Ci nodded. Exactly. Feng Zhen smacked his lips. Just watch. That Niao Yang is not simple. If he is allowed to live and clean up the internal affairs of the Nie family, he will be a formidable opponent. Ci said that Niao Yang's body is not suitable to expend too much effort and energy. Wei Ci lowered his eyes and said, moreover, the internal affairs of the Nie family are intertwined. To clean them up is not something that can be done in a day or two. Although Niao Yang is the most outstanding of the grandchildren, the fifth branch of the Nie family does not have much power. If not for this, the mission of diplomatic envoy to another country would not have landed on Niao Yang. If he wants to clean up the Nie family, there is still a long way to go. Feng Zhen's mouth twitched. He asked blankly, if he does not follow the doctor's advice, Wei Ci said, his lifespan will be shortened. Internal strife was common in every aristocratic family. Even the righteous Shangyang Feng family could not avoid it. You're tuning into the A Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.